Chapter 295. Gotcha! Rumble. Lightning flashed across the dark clouds. As the flashing lightning tore through the darkness that enveloped the rainforest, it also illuminated Norris's solemn expression clearly. "Colonel, what are you worried about?" Masad ran back from the battlefield tent under the heavy rain. He didn't even have time to wipe off the rainwater on his hat when he saw Norris' serious face. "Masad, how's the situation with the sonar?" Norris didn't answer Masad's question. Instead, he looked at Masad with the same serious gaze and asked slowly. Masad was stunned. He took off his hat that was soaked by the rain and sighed. "The situation isn't good. The strong electromagnetic field brought by the thunderclouds and the heavy rain has reduced the effectiveness of the sonar to the point where it can't be used. Now, the only way we can monitor the outside world is to set up the sentries around this hidden stronghold." Norris nodded slowly but didn't say anything. However, when he turned his head to look at the dark clouds in the sky, there were also bolts of lightning flashing across them like snakes. Looking at the dark clouds that covered the sky, Norris knew that the heavy rain wouldn't end in a short period of time. "Masad, does Major General Kenyas have any instructions?" Masad muttered to himself and then said, "Yes, Colonel. The Major General does have instructions, but he still wants us to guard this stronghold until reinforcements arrive." "Reinforcements? Reinforcements in this damned weather?" Norris' mouth twitched, but he resisted the urge to curse in the end. This damned weather not only paralyzed the sonar equipment, it also made the usually muddy roads in the rainforest even harder to walk on. The huge humanoid MS had already lost the ability to walk in the rainforest in this heavy rain. If they took the risk and forcefully marched in this heavy rain, it would be normal for them to accidentally enter a swamp. What they were most afraid of was encountering the Federation army and exposing this hidden stronghold. "Masad." "Yes." Masad, who was carefully paying attention to the changes in Norris' expression, immediately responded when Norris opened his mouth. "Can you confirm the situation of the sentries around?" "Yes," Masad hurriedly guaranteed. "To be on the safe side, we mostly use wired communication when we set up hidden sentries. As long as we activate the corresponding communication line, we will be able to contact the hidden sentries in the surroundings." "Wired communication?" Well done. Go and confirm the situation of all the hidden sentries. Get them to be 200% focused." Norris nodded approvingly and waved his hand. "I have a hunch. I'm afraid this damned weather will bring us a lot of trouble." Norris barked. The sigh of this man who had been through life and death countless times on the battlefield made Masad's heart tighten subconsciously. He was afraid that this stronghold would not be peaceful before the storm ended. Rumble, under Norris' solemn gaze, a twisted bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, striking down towards the distance. Actually, in Norris' heart, the safety of this stronghold was not the most important thing. The only thing more important than this stronghold was the X3 engine that Masad mentioned. "Let's hope we can reach here smoothly." Norris couldn't take his eyes off the streaks of lightning streaking across the sky as he sighed to himself. Under the heavy rain, even the canopy that was usually so dense that sunlight couldn't penetrate it couldn't block the endless rainwater that flowed down from the top of the canopy. "TSK, what kind of damned weather is this? Why is it raining so heavily all of a sudden? This weather is far worse than Side 2's. I've never seen Side 2 have such heavy rain." A new recruit whose collar was unbuttoned was holding a small bucket in his hand. He was constantly filling up the water in the outpost and then pouring it outside. He was angrily cursing the heavens. "Private, how long have you been in the army?" Compared to the swearing new recruit, the man with a scar on the left side of his face was much more normal. According to his resume, this scarred man, who was called Sergeant by the new recruit, was one of the first batch of veterans to participate in the landing operations of the Guing Duchy. To him, he was already used to the extreme weather changes in the rainforest, so he wouldn't make a fuss about it like this new recruit. Sergeant, I'm Gewing's private who was ordered to land on Earth 3 months ago. Hearing the scarred man's words, the new recruit who was pouring water with a small bucket immediately stood up and replied loudly. However, it seemed that the new recruit had used too much force and accidentally kicked the puddles of water high up into the air, almost drenching the communicator on the table. The scarred man looked at the water that slid down from the communicator to the table. His mouth twitched a few times, but he still shook his head helplessly. Private, don't pour it. Get a rag and wipe it. Yes. While the new recruit was looking for a rag in the water that had already reached his heels, the scarred man suddenly noticed that the silent communicator suddenly lit up with a red indicator light. Mission. The scarred man's heart skipped a beat, but before he could pick up the communicator to respond, the new recruit who went to look for a rag suddenly screamed. Ah! What happened? Recruit! The scarred man roared loudly. Because of the communicator, the scarred man couldn't immediately stand up to look for the new recruit. I hope you don't cause any trouble for me. The scarred man clenched his teeth and finally chose the most important option for the mission. This is 03 Silencer. Picking up the communicator, the scarred man reported a code name and then silently listened to the voice from the other side of the communicator. When the voice stopped, the scarred man spoke again. Yes. Now, everything. However, without waiting for the scarred man to finish speaking, the flustered recruit rushed into the room amidst the splashing of water. Voila! In the dirty water that was full of fallen leaves, the new recruit with a panicked face laid on the ground and pointed at the corridor outside with his trembling right hand. The scarred man frowned and shouted loudly. What happened? Right now, I'm reporting the situation to the rear. What are you doing? Recruit. Bye. The scarred man's shout didn't make the new recruit come back to his senses. He still pointed outside with a panicked expression, as if there was something terrifying approaching from outside. Bye what? Recruit. If you continue to disturb me reporting the situation to the rear, we'll see. The scarred man looked at the corridor that was filled with rain but no one. After reprimanding the new recruit, he turned back and said to the communicator, No. It's just that the new recruit isn't used to the weather here. There's nothing unusual. Yes. I'll be more vigilant. Yes. Understood. Then I'll hang up first. Ta. The scarred man put down the communicator, stood up, and walked to the front of the new recruit. He reached out and grabbed the new recruit's collar and lifted him up. Recruit. Although the weather here is strange for people born on a colonial satellite, you don't have to be so panicked. Next time, if you do this again, I'll teach you a lesson. No. It's not. There's really something. It's bye. Facing the scarred man's threat, the new recruit shook his head, but the panic on his face was still there. Bye what? If you talk nonsense again, be careful of me. Boom. Before the scarred man finished speaking, the solid concrete dome above his head suddenly exploded violently. In the blink of an eye, the scarred man and the panicked new recruit were swallowed. In the next second, the huge amount of water brought by the heavy rain rushed down from the huge hole that had just been blasted open by the explosion. It quickly submerged the hidden sentry post in the rainforest in the muddy water mixed with fallen leaves and broken branches. Next to the gap, 2 faint arcs of light quietly rotated for a while before disappearing in the heavy rain. The third one. I didn't expect Kineas to set up so many hidden sentries nearby. In just a short distance of less than 1 kilometer, there were 3 hidden sentries. How cautious! In front of his eyes was the rainwater that constantly streaked across the screen, and in his ears was the frantic patter of the rain hitting the cold armor. Ray Minkai stretched out his hand and nodded on the keyboard. A floor plan marked with dozens of red crosses appeared in front of his eyes. This was the suspected target discovered during the reconnaissance just now. However, due to this damned torrential rain, they could only use close contact to eliminate these hidden sentries that were scattered along the path they had to pass through. Although it's a bit troublesome, I'm now piloting a Lancelot and not a Marine Gouda, yes. Previously, Ray Minkai was able to confidently take on the mission of outflanking the enemy from the small path because of the Lancelot. After Ray Minkai came to this world, the Lancelot that was hidden in the rainforest by Macross Demonis was activated. This rainforest might not be a stumbling block for Ray Minkai anymore. Compared to the 18 meters tall Marine Gouda, the 5 meters tall Lancelot would not be hindered by the dense rainforest. Even the Lancelot equipped with the light wing system could fly over the canopy and reach its destination. However, this was not Ray Minkai's purpose. More than 10 kilometers away from the target, continue forward. Lancelot, who was shrouded in the rainstorm, put away the 2 infrared detectors and quietly disappeared into the darkness. From this moment on, Lancelot seemed to have become a dark assassin, constantly setting off waves of silent killings in this rainforest. 1, 2, 3, the rumbling thunder drowned out the sound of the hidden sentries being destroyed by Lancelot. The heavy downpour that covered the sky and earth erased the traces of the hidden sentries' existence. The only thing that proved that they still existed was the sealed communication line that extended from the depths of the rainforest. However, even if the rumbling thunder in the sky did not stop, and the rainstorm showed no signs of calming down, the soldiers guarding the communication device still discovered something strange. "Colonel, there's a situation." The cold sweat on Massad's forehead was almost like the rainstorm outside the door, constantly dripping down from his cheek. "Speak." The solemn expression on Nora's face did not fade from the beginning. The hidden sentries that we placed outside seemed to have lost contact. Right now, we are confirming the situation. However, what we can confirm is that we have lost at least 10 of our hidden sentries. Upon hearing this news, a cold light flashed across Nora's eyes. "No need to say any more. I know. Right now, notify everyone. Everyone, get ready for battle." After saying that, Norris did not care about Massad's reaction and walked out of the door in large strides. Braving the heavy rain, he walked towards the Zagu that he was driving. "Go, Colonel." Massad was not stupid. Under Norris' clear command, Massad already knew what he should do. "Everyone, get ready for battle. The enemy is here." Under the command, the entire hidden stronghold moved. Rain, human figures, and the constantly lit headlights, as well as the huge humanoid weapon that slowly stood up in the heavy rain, became the main theme at this moment. This movement was naturally discovered by Ray Minkai, who was stealthily nearby. "Have we been discovered?" Under the forest, Lancelot turned on the infrared detector on his chest. At this distance, Lancelot's infrared detector was able to directly observe the movement of this hidden stronghold. Especially when the land-type Zagu was activated, it emitted an astonishing amount of heat. The heat was like a small sun on the infrared detector, making it impossible for people to ignore its existence. 1, 2, 3. 3 Zagu? Seems like the military strength of this hidden stronghold is not small. With a rough look, other than the 3 brightest figures, there were more than 10 figures that looked like armored vehicles, as well as hundreds of people running around. Looking at the land-type Zagu that was already activated and gathered together, Ray Minkai muttered to himself for a moment. After looking up at the heavy rain that was still not subsiding, he came to a conclusion in his heart. 1. The high-speed rotation of the guide wheel caused high splashes as it pushed Lancelot into the shadows of the forest. "Colonel, the battle preparations are complete. Please give the order." Norris casually placed his wet clothes to the side and silently looked at the image on the screen. He did not immediately reply to Massad's request. After a while, Norris opened his mouth and gave the first order. "Everyone, disperse the formation and surround the stronghold to defend." "Yes, Colonel." Under Norris' command, The 3 land-type Zagu split up and led the armored vehicles to the triangle of the stronghold. They firmly controlled the best position to attack the stronghold. However, as time passed by, the enemy that Norris expected did not seem to show any signs of appearing. Chapter 296. Minutes and seconds passed. The attack did not happen, but the hidden sentries outside lost contact one by one. Masad, who was in charge of the communication center, gradually began to feel anxious. The more the enemy did not appear, the more likely the scale of the attack would be. It was even possible that the enemy would crush this stronghold with their superior forces. "Colonel, what should we do now?" Masad had such a question in his heart, but he knew that Norris would not answer this question at all. Because, right now, Norris was staring at the dense forest where only the sound of rain hitting the leaves and branches could be heard. In a shadowy corner of this dense forest, a white figure quietly appeared. It was far smaller than the Zagu II, but it was also because of this that it was able to traverse through the dense rainforest and remove the hidden sentries that John's army had nailed into the rainforest one by one. Now, the first stage of its mission had been completed, and the hidden sentries on the team's route have basically been cleared. Then, it's time to greet the enemy. Gotcha! Rumble! At this time, another lightning that illuminated the sky swept across the sky. Even though they were separated by a screen, Norris' face was still ghastly pale under the illumination of the bright lights. Masad, when will the X3 engine arrive? I'm afraid it will take another hour. The torrential rain came too suddenly. It has disrupted all of our plans. Masad opened his mouth and reluctantly said the time that even he felt that he could not accept. An hour? That's good. But Norris did not care much about this time. In the end, the reason why he asked this was probably because he wanted to know how long this battle would last. Gotcha! Rumble! In the sky, another lightning swept across the sky. Boom! Different from before, at the moment when the rolling thunder exploded, a flame suddenly exploded on the southeast side of the stronghold. It was an armored vehicle. It was the armored vehicle that was following the number 3 Zagu that suddenly exploded. What happened? Enemy attack? Masad was shocked and quickly asked. However, the reply he received was that he didn't know, or that he didn't even have time to see what had happened. The only thing he knew was that the armored vehicle suddenly shook and exploded. Moreover, whether it was the Zagu that was closer to them or the soldiers behind the bunker, none of them could detect what was going on. Gather the formation and activate the infrared detection equipment. Norris' voice rang out in a timely manner, calming down the soldiers who had fallen into confusion and even a hint of unease. However, after the infrared equipment was turned on, the soldiers, the infrared detectors on the vehicles, and the equipment used on Zagu could not detect any traces of the enemy in the dense forest around the stronghold. Strange. Masad frowned deeply. Without a doubt. The armored vehicle that had exploded for no reason just now made Masad suspicious. Even though everyone's infrared equipment had scanned the nearby dense forest several times, they still couldn't find any traces of the enemy. Not only did this suspicion not fade, but it also deepened. Increase the alert. In the face of such a strange situation, Norris didn't say much, but only gave the order to continue increasing the alert. Gotcha! Rumble! Another bolt of lightning flashed across the sky. The rolling thunder instantly drowned out all other sounds in the world. The flickering light flashed and disappeared. However, in the northeast direction of the stronghold, a ball of fire rose. It was another armored vehicle. Boom! This explosion instantly grabbed everyone's attention. Report! Report the situation! Masad's eyes almost popped out. Just a moment ago, his gaze happened to be in the northeast direction and fell on the armored vehicle that had exploded. However, he, who had witnessed the explosion of the armored vehicle with his own eyes, couldn't see what had caused the armored vehicle to be engulfed by the explosion for no reason. Moreover, the radio operator sitting next to Masad also happened to be talking to the commander of the armored vehicle to confirm the situation. Strange. Too strange. Not to mention Masad's own eyes, even the commander who was talking to the radio operator didn't notice anything strange. So, what happened? Masad opened his mouth and couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. If the explosion of the first armored vehicle was an accident, then the explosion of the second armored vehicle was undoubtedly man-made. Gotcha! Rumble! Another bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, setting off a series of roaring thunder. At this moment, Norris, who had been silent, suddenly moved. The land-type Zagu 2, he was driving, bent its legs and jumped toward the nearest armored vehicle. At the same time, the land-type Zagu 2 pulled out its heat axe and chopped down at the muddy ground in front of the armored vehicle with a fierce wind sound. Boom! The moment the blazing heat axe blade came into contact with the muddy and cold ground, it exploded into a mass of air that was mixed with steam and mud. Nothing. Looking at the empty space beneath the heat axe, Norris furrowed his eyebrows. In the next second, the hole was flooded by the water. When the bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, Norsley had indeed sensed that something was rapidly approaching the armored vehicle. That was why Norsley had suddenly made a move to stop the explosion and find the culprit behind the explosion of the two armored vehicles. But the result was that there was nothing. What a strange feeling! Norris muttered to himself for a moment. Then, he controlled his Zagu 2 to slowly move forward. He actually wanted to enter the forest alone. Colonel! Danger! Please don't leave the base. When Masad saw that Norris Zagu 2 was about to leave the stronghold and head into the forest to engage in battle with the unknown enemy, he hurriedly shouted out, "No, don't worry about me. Maybe the enemy wants to stall for time." Faintly, Norris seemed to have guessed the enemy's intention. "Since you want to stall for time, then that's exactly what I want." However, in order to prevent further losses to the stronghold, Norris decided to walk alone into the forest where the unknown enemy was hiding. And Norris' action made Ray Minkai, who was hiding in the depths of the forest, slightly surprised. "You have guts. Then, let's have a showdown." Lancelot, who was hiding in the dark, once again put away the infrared detector on his chest and quietly disappeared into the darkness. He was waiting for Norris' arrival somewhere. Gotcha! Rumble! The incessant flashes of lightning illuminated the land-type Zagu 2, causing Norris to feel an indescribable pressure. Suddenly, Norris' heart skipped a beat and instinctively pushed his right hand. His Zagu eye immediately turned to the right. Dang! The next moment, the sound of metal colliding exploded. It was the sound of the Zagu eye's shoulder shield being hit by an unknown object. But Norris did not see any suspicious target or figure from the camera. Ran away? Norris' eyebrows were still knitted together. This feeling was too strange. The sound of the collision just now was real. Even the aftermath of the collision, Norris could feel it. But the enemy's trace was still not found. Not an MS? Or a human? As soon as this question appeared, Norris denied it. In his knowledge, it was impossible for a human to be able to hide their whereabouts. No matter how fast a human was, it was impossible for them to disappear from the Zagu eye's surveillance range in the blink of an eye. The feeling of heart trembling appeared again. It was from behind. Norris' hands and feet moved, and the Zagu eye turned around abruptly again, trying to withstand the threat from behind with its chest. However, the strange thing was that when the land combat type Zagu 2 was about to face the threat from behind, the trembling feeling disappeared once again. It disappeared without a trace. How is this possible? This invisible and untouchable enemy was like a ghost, appearing wherever he wanted to appear, and then disappearing anytime and anywhere before Norris was about to discover him. Norris's expression changed several times. He pulled his right hand gently, raised his thumb, and pressed down fiercely. His Zagu eye immediately raised the 120mm machine gun in its hand. It seemed to be crazily shooting a magazine of bullets at the surrounding area. Da-da-da-da-da. The roar of the 120mm machine gun mixed with the sound of the rainstorm echoed in the rainforest. The bullets that tore the rainstorm apart shattered countless leaves and branches, scattering them all over the ground. Da-da-da. After shooting for a while, the 120mm machine gun ran out of bullet. But the enemy hiding in the dark did not make any sound. Not fooled? Looks like the enemy is not a hothead. Norris snorted and laughed. Once again, he threw away the 120mm machine gun of the Zagu eye without any reluctance and pulled out the heat axe again. Come on, Ghost. Norris's voice sounded on the international public channel. And? Was I seen through? Looking at the land-type Zagu eye, Lancelot, who was hiding in the dark, once again put away the infrared detector. Even at this moment, in the middle of the cold rainstorm, the land-type Zagu eye was still like a small sun on the infrared detector. On the other hand, Lancelot, because of the advantage brought by the small machine, could perfectly hide in the shade of the trees. Compared to the Zagu eye, the relatively weak heat radiation could be covered by the cold rainstorm. Ray Minkai did not know if Norris had seen through the secret that Lancelot was hiding around him, but from the land-type Zagu eye's posture, Norris might have already noticed. Buzz. In the spray caused by the high-speed rotation of the guide wheel, Lancelot jumped up and jumped back and forth on the surrounding huge tree trunks like lightning. In addition, during the jump, he also raised his hand to eject the hook on his forearm and deeply inserted it into the trunk not far away. Under the tightening and tightening, Lancelot's movement trajectory abruptly changed from a straight line to a right-angle flight. This was the reason why Lancelot could appear and disappear unpredictably. Under Ray Minkai's superb driving skills, Lancelot's own mobility had reached a terrifying level. With just a pair of guide wheels and the hook on his left and right forearms, Ray Minkai could allow Lancelot to appear and disappear unpredictably in this rainforest environment with complex terrain and changeable climate. Whoosh! Under the cover of the dense canopy, the nimble Lancelot once again arrived near the back of the land-type Zagu II under the cover of the sounds created by the torrential rain hitting the canopy. Buzz. A soft buzzing sound was heard, and Lancelot's exclusive radiation vibrating sword was held in his hand. Through the gaps in the canopy, Ray Minkai could see the land-type Zagu eye's back and neck. At this moment, Ray Minkai suddenly felt that this scene was somewhat familiar. It was as if it was very similar to some of the scenes in a certain animation he had seen before. A giant? Ray Minkai's mouth twitched slightly, and then he shook off these random thoughts. Buzz! The guide wheel frantically rubbed against the thick branches under Lancelot's feet, and the originally wet bark was rubbed dry. At the moment when the bark was rubbed, it brazenly pushed Lancelot forward like a gust of wind. Behind me again! Norris's heart was alarmed, and his hands and feet moved continuously. The land-type Zagu eye once again turned around in time and waved the heat axe in his hand horizontally towards the canopy behind him. Crackle, crackle! The blazing heat axe instantly chopped through the dense canopy, but the explosion that Norris expected did not appear. No enemies? As soon as this thought appeared, the land-type Zagu eye's body monitoring program suddenly issued a sharp warning. Woo! Norris glanced to the side, and unexpectedly discovered that his Zagu eye had unknowingly injured its right leg. Norris was shocked, and he raised his right hand, and quickly pressed a series of switches on the right side of the control panel, trying to minimize the damage to the right leg in the shortest time possible. Fortunately, the damaged part was suppressed. However, the fear in Norris's heart was growing. His intuition was not wrong. But the enemy's speed was far beyond his imagination. Until now, he had not been defeated by the enemy, or even killed, probably because the enemy wanted to stall for time. Behind the dense forest on one side, Lancelot once again raised the infrared detector, and through the large tree trunk, he could clearly see the land-type Zagu Eye's situation. In the previous charge, Lancelot's target was not Zagu Eye's back, but its right leg. When Zagu Eye's heat axe chopped down on the canopy, Lancelot, under the control of Ray Minkai, quickly shot the hook on his left arm towards Zagu Eye's right leg. While retracting, he brandished his sword towards Zagu Eye's right leg. The storm may be about to stop. Lei Minkai glanced at the black clouds in the sky, where he could vaguely see a crack. Chapter 297. The torrential rain gradually lessened. The dark clouds that covered the sky gradually revealed a sliver of golden light. It was believed that with the end of the torrential rain, the rainforest that had been covered by the torrential rain would finally see the light of day again. The rain has stopped. Norris, who was sitting in the Zagu Eye, slowly spat out these words. He understood that the torrential rain and the darkness that shrouded the rainforest would be the best cover for the enemy hiding in the depths of the forest. However, as long as he persevered for a little while longer, perhaps the sunlight that broke through the dark clouds would allow Norris to catch a glimpse of the enemy's true appearance. It might even bring the hope of victory into Norris' hands. The rain has stopped. The same words sounded again. The only difference was that compared to Norris, who was preparing to launch an attack the moment the sunlight returned to the rainforest, Ray Minkai, who was using the darkness and torrential rain to hide Lancelot, was much more relaxed. For him, the torrential rain and darkness were the best, but they were not absolute. With the help of the strong guide wheels and hook claws, Lancelot was able to freely travel through the rainforest even without the cover of the torrential rain and darkness. Whoosh! A slight sound of the air being torn apart was heard. Following that, Lancelot's hook claw shot out was tightly embedded in a thick tree trunk. In the next moment, Lancelot flew out from the shadows of the forest. He somersaulted in the air and landed lightly on top of a tree branch. Caw! With a soft sound, the two infrared detectors on Lancelot's chest popped out again. Beep beep! Ray Minkai's eyes lit up. The image that appeared in front of him from the infrared detectors gave Ray Minkai a pleasant surprise. I didn't think that your teammate would be so impatient. Ray Minkai smiled lightly. Lancelot once again put away the infrared detectors. He turned around and disappeared into the shadows of the forest. Immediately after, a shadow silently appeared behind the Zagu 2 that Norris was piloting. Just as the cold gleaming front end of the shadow was about to pierce into the land fighter Zagu 2's back, the land fighter Zagu 2 moved once again. All of a sudden, it fell forward and waved its right hand, swinging the heat axe behind it. At the same time, this Zagu Eye also rolled on the ground due to the inertia of falling forward. Boom! The sight of a gigantic humanoid weapon rolling about was definitely not a peaceful one. However, Norris was able to catch a faint sound behind the rumbling. He hit something. This feeling was not wrong. Norris was certain that this time, under his control, the land-type Zagu Eye had definitely struck something. Amidst the splashing of fallen leaves and mud, Norris quickly turned around and forced himself to sit on the ground from a forward rolling position. At the same time, he locked the camera of the landline not far in front of the Zagu Eye. Over there, a sharp object that was so small that it could not be used as an MS weapon was stuck upside down in the puddle of fallen leaves. What a small thing! This is the weapon used to attack Zagu? Obviously, Norris could not believe that the sharp metal object that was not even the size of an adult human was actually one of the culprits that forced the Zagu Eye he was piloting into such a predicament. 1. At this moment, a burst of sound pierced through the air. Crack! Then, Norris saw it. The metal object that was very similar to the sharp metal object that was stuck upside down in the puddle of water was piercing through the body of the land-type Zagu Eye's heat axe with an astonishing penetrating force. From Norris's point of view, The sharp metal object that pierced through the heat axe from left to right was undoubtedly an existence that was mocking him. How could it be so despicable? Norris roared loudly, his hands moving continuously. His land-type Zagu eye's single eye suddenly lit up, a huge force instantly erupted from its arm, and it lifted the heat axe. Pung! A soft sound of a steel cable being stretched taut rang out. It was actually the land-type Zagu eye that had pierced through the heat axe, and the sharp metal object that was stuck on top of it was trying to pull out the culprit that was hiding in the shadows. Pung! The steel cable that was linked to the sharp metal object was stretched taut silently, and the force that was added to it was increasing. Gradually, it exceeded the upper limit of the steel cable's design when it was made. But even so, the land-type Zagu eye and the culprit that was hiding in the shadows were still unwilling to let go, and stubbornly decided to use this steel cable that was stretched taut by two huge forces to decide the victor. Is it really the difference in size? The power of the guide wheel had already been raised to the maximum power. As long as one could see the muddy water that was constantly being thrown into the air when the guide wheel was madly operating, one would know that at this very moment, Lancelot was already using all of his strength to wrestle with the land-type Zagu eye. However, due to the huge difference in size, and the difference in power output of the energy system, purely in terms of wrestling, Lancelot was far from being able to compete with the Zagu eye that was 3 times the size of Lancelot. Woo, woo, woo. The guide wheel suddenly made a painful sound. It seemed that it had reached its limit. If it persisted, Lancelot's guide wheel power system would inevitably malfunction irredeemably. Let's stop here. Although Ray Minkai was unwilling, he had already accepted the fact in front of him. Pa! The moment Lei Minkai decisively raised his hand and pressed the emergency button that disconnected the steel cable that connected the hooks and claws, the land-type Zagu 2 that had suddenly lost its mutual support couldn't help but retreat under the powerful inertia. It didn't stop until it took 6 steps back before it managed to stop its body. However, at the moment when the land-type Zagu eye continuously retreated, Lancelot's hand once again lit up with the unique cold light of the radiation vibrating sword. At the same time, during the wrestling just now, the guide wheel that was almost damaged due to overloading still loyally erupted with all its potential, pushing Lancelot forward rapidly in this muddy rainforest that was still filled with water. Pung! In just a short few breaths, when the land-type Zagu eye landed on its 6th step and stabilized its body, Lancelot, who started later but arrived first, rushed out from the shadows of the dense forest like lightning. With a raise of his hand, the pair of radiation vibrating sword had already chopped down on the land-type Zagu eye's left foot. Slash! Under the invincible blade of the radiation vibrating sword, the land-type Zagu eye's sturdy armor that was forged from super tensile steel and was able to withstand the direct attacks of most of the Federation Army's medium to small caliber cannons was easily split apart by the radiation vibrating sword like tender tofu. One hit was successful. Ray Minkai did not continue to fight, nor did he stay in the same place to observe his battle results. He continued to control Lancelot to accelerate towards the dense rainforest in front of him. Boom! Lancelot hadn't gone far when an explosion that wasn't too loud, but it was extremely fatal. Not good. Left foot. This time, the land-type Zagu eye's system was unable to suppress the damage to its left foot. This was because Lancelot's sword actually swept past the land-type Zagu eye's knee and forcefully chopped off the left calf of the land-type Zagu eye. The scene in front of him quickly collapsed. Norris' hands and feet continuously pushed and pulled on the lever, stepping on the valve, but in the end, he could only helplessly watch the muddy ground occupy half of the scene in front of him. Damn it! Get up! Zagu! Norris tightly clenched his teeth, and still did not give up trying to control the land-type Zagu eye to stand up again. Boom! At this moment, the blazing flames let out a roar. It was the land-type Zagu-Ai's propulsion backpack. Under the scorching flames, the muddy ground behind the land-type Zagu-Ai quickly dried up and hardened until it was burned black by the flames. Under the explosive force of the propulsion backpack, the huge land-type Zagu-Ai forcefully dragged a long drag mark on the muddy ground until it crashed into a tree not far away. Only then did it rely on the tree that was knocked askew and barely managed to regain its standing position. Then, without waiting for Norris to observe the situation around him, the scene in front of him turned into a red and indistinct sword blade. Yes, that's right. It's a sword blade. Although from the scene, the size of the sword blade was somewhat out of Norris' expectations, in fact, it was similar in size to the sharp metal object that was previously cut off by the land-type Zagu-Ai. "Don't move," an unfamiliar and young voice sounded. However, no matter how Norris used the land-type Zagu-Ai's single-eyed camera to move back and forth, he was unable to see the owner of the red sword blade that appeared on the screen. After a fruitless search, Norris gritted his teeth and could not help but sigh in his heart. Is this the end for me? The enemy's intention was already very clear. Under such an overwhelming advantage, even if Norris had the powerful MS technology, he could not make up for the difference in performance between the two bodies. In particular, the information between the two sides was not equal. The people in this world did not know the existence of a small machine like the Lancelot, but Ray Minkai knew the difference in performance between the MS and the KMF body like the Lancelot. Therefore, the land-type Zagu-Ai was targeted just like that. Da-da-da! All of a sudden, a burst of sparks appeared in the dense forest. It was shooting. Reinforcements! Norris vaguely saw that behind the burst of sparks was the unique single-eyed head of Zagu. "Colonel, it's okay. We're coming to support now." Massad's voice sounded in the next moment. Norris was startled and immediately scolded. "Idiot! Hurry up and leave." "One!" A low sound rang in the dense forest, but at this moment, Norris could hear it exceptionally clearly. Then, a burst of sparks exploded. Norris clearly saw that the moment the burst of sparks exploded, the land-type Zagu-Ai that had launched support fire from the dense forest had its left leg blown off. "Idiot! Hurry up and leave. The enemy only wants to stall for time." Before Norris could finish his roar, in the middle of the gloomy forest, another ball of sparks exploded. This time, the land-type Zagu-Ai that had come to support had both of its arms blown off. With its left leg and both of its arms blown off, the Zagu-Ai that had lost its balance struggled powerlessly. Just like Norris, it could only helplessly watch as its own body fell into the mud filled with fallen leaves and broken branches. In the next second, a burst of weak sparks caused Norris to grit his teeth tightly. 1. In the midst of the weak sparks, a red sword blade pierced through the land-type Zagu-Ai's cockpit. Da-da-da! A burst of rapid bullets whistled through the air once again. This was another land-type Zagu-Ai. Although the attack just now seemed to take a long time, in reality, it only took less than a minute. Therefore, this land-type Zagu-Ai that was at the back was completely unable to react. It could only watch as its teammate's left leg and both legs were chopped off by Lancelot. After that, Lancelot's sword pierced through the cockpit. Only then did it scream in fear and pull the trigger. Dang, dang, dang. The whistling bullets hit the land-type Zagu-Ai that had its cockpit pierced through without any hindrance. Sparks flew out from its ice-cold armor, and pitch-black holes were left on it by its former teammate. Then, boom! The land-type Zagu-Ai that had already lost all of its ability to react was blown apart. "Stop, idiot!" Norris's roar finally woke up the pilot of the third land-type Zagu-Ai. "Go, Colonel!" That pilot stared blankly at the land-type Zagu-Ai that was engulfed in flames. Pung! In the instant when an afterimage flew out from the dense canopy, a red flash also bloomed. 1. It was the subtle sound of metal being cut by a sharp object. "I can't see." I can't see. In the midst of the frightened screams, Norris witnessed the scene of the third land-type Zagu-Ai's head being chopped off. However, Norris still did not see the murderer's face. He only vaguely saw a blurry white shadow flash past. Not a human. Norris's voice rang out in the cockpit as he gnashed his teeth. Colonel! Colonel! Quickly save me! The land-type Zagu-Ai whose main monitor was cut off retreated continuously. The pilot who was piloting it was even more frightened and subconsciously pressed the firing button of the 120mm machine gun. Da-da-da-da-da. The whistling bullets swept in all directions crazily, breaking the branches and tearing the leaves apart. They even whistled past the land-type Zagu-Ai that Norris was piloting. There were even a few times when they almost hit Norris's land-type Zagu-Ai. The corner of Norris's eyes twitched crazily. The enemy hiding in the dark was indeed stalling for time, but in reality, Norris had discovered something else. He was playing with them like a cat playing with a mouse. Clang! The red flash appeared once again. The indiscriminate firing stopped, but what followed was the roar of ammunition exploding, and the surrounding area was illuminated by the flames. That's... Suddenly, Norris's eyes widened. His hands could only be seen skimming across the keyboard quickly. The scene in front of him instantly froze and was quickly magnified 10 times. That's an MS? How is that possible? How can an MS be so small? In Norris's shocked eyes, the ghost murderer's face finally appeared. It was a white steel warrior that looked like a knight. Chapter 298. The headless steel giant stumbled and fell to the ground. Short and small, wielding a pair of scarlet swords, like a magnificent knight from legends. Compared to Zagu, this was a relatively short figure. This extreme difference in height caused Norris to be unable to shift his gaze away. That extremely shocking difference in height subverted Norris's understanding of the MS. This killing machine created by the crystallization of human technology actually had such a small form. That's right. Although this was the first time Norris had seen this Zagu-Ai, which was only a third of its height, no, it could even use a quarter of its height as a humanoid weapon. However, due to human habitual thinking, Norris immediately treated this short body, which was Lancelot, as a new type of MS, a new weapon from the Federation? Norris' hands moved, and his land-type Zagu-2 immediately reached out to the side, forcibly uprooting a large tree that was several meters tall, before tossing it towards Lancelot with all his might. The sound of the wind suddenly rose. A sword flashed. The large tree that Norris had thrown out by the land-type Zagu-2 was immediately chopped down. At the same time, the white knight Lancelot, who was not even 5 meters tall, slowly raised the radiation sword in his right hand and pointed it at the Zagu-Ai that Norris was piloting. A chill instantly spread from Norris's spine to his brain. However, this chill did not frighten this Tiger King who had experienced many battles. Instead, it aroused the Tiger King's fighting spirit. Hey! Have you finally made up your mind to kill me? Small MS. Norris grinned, his voice becoming even more excited. 1. The mechanical humming sound rumbled. The Zagu-Ai, who was still holding the thermal axe in his hand, once again reached out and uprooted the tree beside him. His axe was in front, and the tree in his hand was behind. If it wasn't for the fact that the legs of Zagu-Ai had been crippled by Lancelot, Norris would definitely have charged forward and unleashed his strongest attack. However, reality forced Norris to let his Zagu-Ai lean against a tree and sit on the ground, assuming a nondescript offensive posture. However, Lancelot ignored Norris' provocation. The guide wheel under its feet moved, and it made a few rapid turns to the left. In the blink of an eye, it arrived at the waist of Zagu-Ai whose head was cut off. Then, with a turn of his left hand, the scarlet radiation vibration sword pierced through the ultra-high-tension steel like it was nothing. It easily pierced through the cockpit of the land-type Zagu-Ai. At this moment, Norris' eyes were filled with rage. However, He had no way of moving the Zagu-I land combat model that he was piloting. Even if it was the land-type Zagu-I's own propulsion backpack, it would not be able to accomplish what Norris had in mind. This was because Norris knew that relying solely on the land-type Zagu-I's propulsion backpack would not be able to defeat this small MS with amazing maneuverability. Cold sweat quietly appeared, and then quietly slid down Norris' face. Norris' eyes followed Lancelot's scarlet sword that had sent his teammate to the underworld slowly being pulled out from the cockpit. The alarm in his heart grew louder and louder. It's coming! At this moment, Norris seemed to have seen the scythe of the Grim Reaper slowly raised, and like lightning, it slashed towards his neck. Yes, Norris' eyes were already attracted by the scarlet radiation vibration sword in Lancelot's hands. It was as if he had fallen into an endless whirlpool of death, unable to extricate himself. Come, White Reaper! Norris, whose eyes were filled with the radiation vibration sword, pushed his right hand forward. His land-type Zagu-I fiercely swung the heat axe in its hands, and slashed straight towards the scarlet blade in Norris' eyes. Who? The wind howled, and the heat emitted from the heat axe actually dried up the fallen leaves around the land-type Zagu-I, setting them ablaze, until a whirlwind of sparks appeared on the land-type Zagu-I's body. However, behind this whirlwind of fire, was the reality that Norris' full-force attack had missed. The land-type Zagu-I's right hand was raised high, the heat axe was still blazing hot. However, the scarlet blade in Norris' eyes had unknowingly disappeared, leaving behind the land-type Zagu-I's full-force attack that had fallen behind. How could this be? Under Norris' astonished gaze, the dark clouds that had covered the entire area began to disperse, revealing cracks that allowed the sun to shine upon the land once more. However, when the first ray of sunlight scattered in front of the land-type Zagu-I, the White Knight who had lowered his blade and was standing on the treetop, Norris realized that the White Knight who was supposed to send him to hell had actually focused his attention on the sky, on the dark clouds that had quietly dispersed. Then, Norris, who subconsciously raised his head to look at the sky, saw it. He saw a huge, disc-shaped, turtle-shell-like airframe that was surrounded by 4 Doris, 2 Lugan tactical reconnaissance aircraft, and 4 combat helicopters. It slowly broke through the dark clouds, descending towards the rainforest that had just seen the light of day. Furthermore, it wasn't difficult for Norris to see that the target of this airframe that he had never seen before, and yet was surrounded by so many airframes, was the stronghold that he was previously guarding. Suddenly, Norris's heart quivered. Not good. All the Zagus have run out. Then, the Federation army should be in the stronghold right now. However, even if Norris had already thought of this crucial point, he was already powerless to change anything. The current him was undoubtedly like a fish on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Whang! The sound of the guide wheel turning sounded again, but it was getting further and further away. In a flash, Lancelot, who was standing on top of the tree, disappeared. The next moment, Norris suddenly opened the communication channel and kept shouting, "The troops that landed over there! Run! The White Reaper is coming! Run!" Above the dark clouds, a messy communication channel rushed into the slowly descending Apsaras. Cha-cha quick, white quick, sitting in the middle of Apsaras, Iona's brows gradually furrowed. There was too much noise in the messy communication channel. Even the communication equipment that Apsaras was equipped with couldn't be successfully repaired. The only thing that could be identified was the general direction that the noise came from. Lugan 1, can you see anything over there? Ina pressed several buttons in an attempt to repair the messy communication channel, but to no avail. She then sent an inquiry to the Lugan tactical reconnaissance aircraft in front of her. Nope. I didn't discover much. The only thing that I saw was that the area affected by the rainstorm was too large. The rainforest below is almost completely flooded by the heavy rainfall, and I can't find any effective signs to identify our stronghold. Lugan 1, which had descended to a certain altitude for reconnaissance, replied. I got it. Increase the surveillance. Iona's pretty face gradually became serious. According to the last communication that her brother Kineas sent after Apsaras took off, the Federation army stationed in the rainforest seemed to have discovered the existence of the X-3 engine. The few bait units that were sent out before had been annihilated by the Federation. Although Kineas was confident in the bait, for the sake of insurance, the safest thing to do was to transport the X-3 engine back to the base as soon as possible. However, the rainforest below was now being ravaged by the flood, and the communication channel with the stronghold was also paralyzed because of the flood. Lugan 2. Continue to descend. Try to find any possible communication channel from our army, especially the one just now. Aina thought for a while and decided to let another Lugan tactical reconnaissance aircraft descend to a lower altitude to search for any possible communication channel. Yes, Ms. Aina. In addition, the tactical helicopter is ready to enter the battle at any time. Dora also needs to be prepared to receive any wounded soldiers that may be discovered. Yes, Ms. Aina. Iona's decision was appropriate. She knew that when Apsaras appeared in the sky, even if she didn't take the initiative to search for the stronghold, the enemy would likely discover the existence of Apsaras. Moreover, if the Federation army also appeared here, then it meant that when Apsara's altitude was low enough for the Federation army to fire, a battle would be inevitable. Walla! Walla! In the raging flood, 6 Marines Gauda separated in an arrow formation and slowly and steadily advanced in the rainforest ravaged by the flood. On both sides of them, 2 Type 74 air cushion trucks were relying on the powerful air cushion engine to move back and forth in the flood. They cautiously observed the surroundings and provided timely reconnaissance information for their Marines Gauda. This was not. But the moment Apsaras appeared above the rainforest with many fighters, whether it was the Type 74 air cushion trucks or the Marines Gauda, they immediately discovered its existence. That's huge! Is that John's secret body? Everyone exclaimed in unison. The birth of MS has only been around for 1 or 2 years. The world's view of MS was nothing more than a huge humanoid steel combat weapon. But Apsaras, who appeared above the rainforest at this moment, subverted everyone's inherent impression of MS. Even the iron ball of the Federation army, which was jokingly called the Iron Coffin, was far from being comparable to this huge behemoth that seemed to have the ability to fly on its own. Captain Leonti, the target of this big guy seems to be the stronghold we're about to go to. Shiro Amada forcibly withdrew his attention from Apsaras and opened the communication channel with Leonti. Perhaps we did catch a big fish this time. Leonti paused and immediately opened the team communication channel. Everyone, check if there is any error in the beacon left by 2nd Lieutenant Ray Minkai, and enter Level 1 combat state. We caught a big fish this time. Yes, sir. Everyone responded loudly. Merce. What's the status of number 3? Leonti looked at number 3 Marine Gauda, who was walking on the far left of the team. Not bad. But where did that 2nd Lieutenant reporter run off to? He didn't even contact us. Merst gave a thumbs up. I don't know. But I believe that 2nd Lieutenant Ray Minkai will be fine. Leonti was very confident in Ray Minkai. The source of the signal was none other than a beacon that only the 2 Gundam teams could identify in the surrounding area. From the beginning, Leonti didn't believe that Ray Minkai could open a path for the 2 Gauda teams to pass through this rainstorm-shrouded and dangerous tropical rainforest by himself. But now, Leonti realized that Ray Minkai, this so-called reporter lieutenant, was not as simple as he looked. Take cover. Zeon's reconnaissance plane is here. Shiro Amada's eyes were sharp. He immediately noticed the Lugan reconnaissance aircraft that had descended in front of Apsalas. After making a large circle, it flew towards them. In the blink of an eye, all the Marine Gauda teams hid behind the nearest tree and quietly waited for the Lugan reconnaissance plane to leave. On the other side, Ray Minkai, who let Norris go, hid Lancelot in the canopy of a tree below Apsara's. Apsara's. I didn't expect it to make a move. Ray Minkai's probing eyes moved back and forth on Apsara's, but he didn't find that Apsara's was equipped with weapons beyond the scope of Ray Minkai's memory. Is it still Apsara's one? But it actually allowed Apsara's, who doesn't have any weapons, to come here under the great risk of being discovered by the Federation army. Thinking of this, Ray Minkai suddenly became more and more interested in the truth hidden under the stronghold. However, in the previous attack, Ray Minkai didn't find anything noteworthy in the stronghold. Otherwise, the only 3 Zagu eyes would not have easily walked out of the stronghold and been led into the rainforest by Ray Minkai. Haven't they reached the stronghold yet? With this thought, Ray Minkai felt that it was very possible. After pondering for a moment, Ray Minkai raised his head and glanced at Apsara's, who was still surrounded by many fighters. If I and Lancelot don't intervene in the battle between Apsara's and Gauda, Apsara's should be able to escape from this battle smoothly. After all, Gauda doesn't have the ability to fly independently like Lancelot. So, after making a decision, Ray Minkai pushed with both hands, and Lancelot, who was hidden in the canopy, turned over and fell from the canopy in a free fall. Then, just as he was about to fall into the flood below, the light wing system that Lancelot had been hiding was instantly activated. The light wings were instantly activated. The blazing energy storm instantly flushed away the water below, exposing the ground that had been submerged by the flood once again. Then, in this increasingly intense energy storm, Lancelot's light wings flapped, and he turned into a white lightning bolt and rushed into the depths of the rainforest. Let's see what it is that could make Apsara's appear here. Chapter 299. Boom! A spark suddenly exploded in the sky above the rainforest that had just escaped from the ravages of the rainstorm. It was a Lugan tactical reconnaissance aircraft. Not long after the Lugan 2 left, the Lugan 1 that was preparing to scout from another direction was suddenly blasted into smithereens by a missile that came from the dense rainforest below. The battle had begun. Aina immediately increased the altitude of Apsara's to avoid being hit by the missiles launched by the enemy hidden in the rainforest below. Enemy attack? As expected, the Federation Army has discovered our hidden stronghold. In addition to the combat helicopters, the Dora transport aircraft followed Apsala's up. Quick! Fortunately, Apsala's was high enough to give him enough time to pull up in the face of the threat from the rainforest. What's more, the moment the attack happened, the pilots of the combat helicopters reacted quickly and fired a barrage of bullets at the location of the missile in order to buy time for Apsala's to pull up. TSK. They're really fast. Elidoya from the 8th Squad cursed in annoyance. Elidoya had only informed Sandus to launch the missile after he had made the right decision. He did not expect the enemy to react so quickly. It was as if the enemy was prepared to retreat at any time from the beginning. Captain, what do we do now? Sandus was a little uncomfortable after missing the first shot, but he still asked. Let's get rid of those annoying flies first. Captain Leonti. Yes. Spread out, 1 to lure the enemy, 2 to ambush. Hide your tracks well. Leonti glanced at Apsala's, who was gradually rising. He knew that it was impossible to fight this big guy today. If the enemy retreated so decisively, they would definitely not land again. Yes. At this time, not far away, Lancelot, with its wings of light spread out, shuttled through the rainforest that dripped with water from time to time like a ghost. It stopped on the canopy and turned on the infrared detector to scan the surrounding situation, and turned to look at Apsala's, who was gradually rising in the sky. Has the encounter begun? Looks like this Apsala's is just a temporary truck driver, right? Lei Minkai couldn't help but ponder as he watched Apsala's, who was surrounded by several Doris, once again fly toward the gradually thinning dark clouds above his head. Even Rei Minkai could not help but hesitate after seeing Apsalas pull up so decisively, let alone Leonti and Amada Shiro. The mysterious cargo that Apsalas came to pick up, was it really not worth the risk for Apsalas to stay? In fact, the gradually rising Apsalas seemed to indicate that this guess might be correct. Forget it. Let's search around here first. No matter what, since Lancelot had already been used, it was best to make full use of Lancelot's ability to freely travel through the dense tropical rainforest as much as possible. Beep. Suddenly, an image appeared on the infrared detector's screen. From the thermal imaging, it should be an armored vehicle. Armored? If it's not from the Federation, then it should be Zeons. The only ones who could move about in this rainforest were either the Federation or Ji-Wung. As for the armed natives, they could not afford to feed a gas guzzler like an armored vehicle. Lancelot retracted the light wings on his back. Amidst the splashing of water, Lancelot completed a beautiful landing. Then, Lancelot raised his left arm, and the hook on his forearm popped out and pierced into the trunk of the tree next to him. At the same time, it also pulled Lancelot up. In the next second, Lancelot once again alternated between using the guide wheel and the hook to quickly move in the rainforest. He quickly rushed toward the target that seemed to be an armored vehicle. "Colonel, are you okay?" In the previous battle, Masad had not piloted a land-type Zagu 2. Instead, he had sat in an armored vehicle and brought 2 land-type Zagu 2s to rescue Norris. What he didn't expect was that this method allowed him to escape a calamity. When Lancelot was fighting with the 2 Zagu eyes, Masad mysteriously hid the armored vehicle carrying him and watched the whole process of Lancelot killing the 2 Zagu eyes. After Lancelot left, Masad, who was still in shock, quickly called the driver of the armored vehicle to rescue Norris from the half-paralyzed Zagu eye. Fortunately, after being rescued, Norris did not pursue Masad's responsibility. Instead, he urged Masad to contact Apsaras and the escort force of the so-called X3 engine. Therefore, while contacting Apsaras and the escort force of the X3 engine, Norris, Masad, and the others tried their best to get closer to the approximate location of the escort force. However, unfortunately, Norris, who was lucky enough to escape from the scythe of the Grim Reaper, did not have the luck of surviving a disaster. Instead, he encountered Lancelot once again. However, Norris did not expect this to happen. Buzz! A beam of light appeared out of nowhere and hit the half-meter deep water in front of the armored vehicle. Boom! The water splashed several meters high, and the mud mixed in the water covered the front windshield of the armored vehicle. The driver, whose vision was blocked, panicked and ran into a big tree next to him. "What's going on? What are you doing?" Masad, whose head was bleeding from the violent collision, did not even have time to hold his fallen eye as he cursed. "Shut up! We're being watched." Norris took a deep breath. "Let's get out. They don't want to kill us now." Once he got out of the car, Norris was stunned. There was no one outside, and there was no MS as Norris imagined. It was as if the collision of the armored vehicle was caused by the driver's carelessness. However, Norris had clearly heard the sound of a huge explosion. Looking back, the front of the car that had crashed into the tree trunk was still covered in mud. It was not a place that could be hit by the mud when driving normally. After looking around, Norris turned around and asked Masad, "How far are we from our destination?" Masad just took out a handkerchief and covered the wound on his forehead. He looked around and shook his head slightly. Seeing this, Norris returned to the car and looked at the driver who was trying to restore the armored vehicle to normal. The driver, who was trying to restart the armored vehicle and leave this place as soon as possible, shouted with sweat dripping down his forehead. "Colonel, I need some time." Norris nodded. "Go do it." At this moment, Norris was anxious, but he did not show much emotion on his face. But the anxious Norris did not know that he had once again dodged the scythe of the Grim Reaper. The explosion just now was undoubtedly from the Vari's rifle in Lancelot's hands. But, when Lancelot fired the first bullet to force the armored vehicle to stop, Lancelot's infrared detector seemed to have discovered some new target. After weighing the pros and cons, Ray Minkai decided to let go of the poor armored vehicle and moved further ahead. While moving quickly, Ray Minkai was even more surprised to see that Apsalas, which should have risen above the clouds, was actually showing signs of descending again. Could it be that cargo? In an instant, Ray Minkai connected the dots. After thinking carefully, Ray Minkai could not help but increase the speed of Lancelot. He even opened the light wings again, and flew like lightning in the rainforest. Signal confirmed. Identity confirmed. It is indeed what Major General Kenyas wants. Send out a Dora transport plane. Apsalas is in charge of guarding. After many attempts, Aina finally managed to contact the escort team that was supposed to transport the X-3 engine to the secret base, but was blocked by the heavy rain on the way. Looking from the sky, the road ahead had been completely blocked by the flood. The only feasible solution was to use the accompanying Dora transport plane to load the cargo and return to the base as quickly as possible. Apsalas, on the other hand, had become a cover for the X-3 engine due to Iona's decision. She had reason to believe that as long as any Federation army saw Apsalas' huge body, they would all focus their attention on him. Therefore, the Dora transport plane would also quietly send the X-3 engine back to the base under Apsalas' cover. Moreover, when the Dora transport plane began to descend, there was some noise, but the general meaning of the communication could be heard clearly in the internal communication channel. This is Norris Barkard. Who is commanding the Guion army over there? Please answer me. Right now, you are sending yourself to death. Tell me, who do you belong to? Norris Barkard? Hearing this somewhat chaotic and unfamiliar male voice, Aina was suddenly stunned, but she quickly remembered that Kenyas mentioned a certain guard that was specially assigned to her. And this guard's name was Norris Barkard. Colonel Norris Barkard, right? I am Aina Sakhaline. I am currently carrying out the mission of recovering the X-3 engine. Please assist me. After confirming the other party's identity, Aina immediately felt a surge of confidence in her heart. Perhaps she should be able to successfully complete this recovery mission. But what Aina didn't know was that after she revealed her identity, Norris, who was struggling to get out of the armored vehicle that was submerged in the 1-meter-deep flood, was also looking at Apsalas in the sky with a face full of surprise. Aina? Aina Sakhaline? Colonel. That is Major General Kenya's sister, Aina Sakhaline. I didn't expect this beautiful lady to personally come to carry out the mission. Masad's voice came out from the armored vehicle. It didn't matter if he didn't say it, but when Masad said it, Norris' heart tightened. Miss Aina, leave this area immediately. Leave this to us. After Norris quickly issued his warning, he decisively recounted everything that had happened to them in the shortest and most concise manner possible. What? A small MS? How is that possible? The small MS that Norris mentioned was less than 5 meters. No, it could already be described as a super small MS. In the eyes of Aina, the test pilot, it was simply impossible. Not to mention, Aina herself had a genius brother, Kenyas, as the backing of knowledge. Therefore, under the familiar rules of the MS, Aina didn't believe that there would be an MS that was less than 5 meters in this world. At least, there wouldn't be one yet. Masad. The escort team should be escorted by Zagu, right? Norris silently put down the communicator, and after a moment of silence, he returned to the cabin and asked Masad while looking at him. Yes, there should be. But, with the current situation, I'm not sure, and I can't guarantee that the escort team's strength is still intact. The uncertainty in Masad's tone didn't dispel Norris' plan at this time, but instead made him more determined. Full speed ahead. Find the escort team as soon as possible before Apsaras is attacked. Now I need a Zagu. Next, the search process was smooth. As long as Norris and the others slightly raised their heads, they could see the Dora transport plane slowly descending, and using it as a target, they quickly approached their destination. In the end, under the continuous wailing of the heavily damaged armored vehicle that even began to leak water, Norris and the others finally met up with the escort team when the Dora transport plane slowly landed on a flat area that wasn't flooded yet. Quick, give me that Zagu. Then, prepare as many high-explosive bombs as possible. As soon as he jumped out of the car, Norris waved his hand and shouted his order loudly. He then took the land Zagu that was squatting not far away. Although the soldiers of the escort team were somewhat confused, after seeing the logo on Norris' collar and chest, they began to prepare. Meanwhile, the pilot whose mech body was snatched away by Norris also stood up straight. After giving Norris a military salute, he simply turned around and left. "Colonel, do you still want to fight that white demon?" Massid, who was one step behind, saw Norris once again walking towards the land Zagu and immediately rushed up to try to stop Norris. "Yes, I want to settle the score with that white demon." Norris' voice was very hoarse, but it was full of fighting spirit. "You know, my previous failure wasn't for nothing, Massid. Maybe I've already found the weakness of that white demon." Norris looked up at Apsaras that was still hovering in the sky. At this moment, Norris, who had already calmed down, guessed Ina's intention. Then, on the first day of his job, and as Ina Sakaline's guard, Norris felt that he had to be in the most perfect state on the first day of his job. Hum, hum, hum. The land-type Zagutus nuclear furnace let out a series of low humming noises. Several rays of light lit up in front of Norris' eyes, and the scenery outside was reflected in his eyes. Then, under Norris' control, the land Zagu that had a new owner picked up the 120mm machine gun filled with high explosive bombs and stood up from the flood, and once again walked towards the rainforest in front of it. Norris didn't know where the white demon would be, but he knew that as long as Apsaras was flying in the sky for a minute, then the white demon would inevitably appear in front of him. "Come on, white demon! This time, let me see if the Grim Reaper's scythe will still come for me." Chapter 300. In the dense forest, a pair of eyes were quietly watching the many Guion soldiers who were sending a tightly wrapped container to the Dora transport plane. Found it. From the faces of these nervous Guion soldiers, it was not difficult for Ray Minkai to see that this should be the mysterious cargo that would appear in the secret stronghold. However, due to Ray Minkai's intervention and the weather, this mysterious cargo was not discovered by Ray Minkai until now. However, this was not much different from the original result. Rumble! The roar of an engine came from the sky. It was the Dora transport plane again. It seemed that after observing for a while, the Doral transport team hovering around Aputhalas finally made up their mind. They sent out another Doral transport to pick up everyone except for the mysterious cargo. This might be Ray Minkai's opportunity. However, just as Lancelot was about to rush out of the dense forest where he was hiding, a sense of crisis suddenly exploded in Ray Minkai's mind. Buzz! The guiding wheel immediately let out a low roar and pushed Lancelot away from his original position with a powerful force. Da-da-da-da! Almost instantly, a barrage of bullets whizzed through the depths of the dense forest at the same time as the gunshot. The canopy where Lancelot was originally hiding was destroyed in a few seconds. Was I discovered? Lancelot jumped a few times and flashed into the denser and darker dense forest below. However, Lancelot's rapid maneuver did not hide his whereabouts. Instead, in the next second, the canopies on Lancelot's route suffered the same fate. That was, they were wantonly torn apart by the barrage of bullets. Among the broken branches and leaves flying in the sky, bright yellow trajectories kept flashing, shooting the whistling bullets deeper into the dense forest. On the other side, Lancelot was also moving around in this barrage of bullets, moving quickly. Lancelot is being targeted? Ray Minkai did not stop for a moment. He constantly issued new instructions to control Lancelot to quickly shuttle and dodge in this rainforest. No matter how dense and terrifying the barrage behind him was, Lancelot, who was galloping in front, was still unscathed. So fast. However, I have already seen through your weakness, White Devil. Click. As the huge magazine with faint smoke fell off the 120mm machine gun, Norris's eyes also showed a hint of understanding. Yes. Although Lancelot's performance before was so amazing, there was still a fact that could not be avoided. That was that its body, which was less than 5 meters tall, would not and could not be fitted with too much armor. In fact, in order to ensure strong mobility, the armor might be forced to be reduced to a certain extent. Therefore, Norris believed that the 120mm machine gun-equipped Zagu-I was enough to suppress Lancelot. Of course. Suppressed of course. It was not that Norris did not want to kill Lancelot, but he could not do it. In front of Lancelot, who was as agile as a monkey, the huge Zagu-I was simply an extraordinarily clumsy elephant. In this situation where the difference in mobility was so great, if Lancelot wanted to escape, the Zagu-I would not be able to catch up. It could only look at the flying leaves and sand and helplessly sigh. But now, Norris knew that Lancelot's goal was probably the X3 engine they were transporting. Therefore, with this goal in mind, Norris was confident that he could delay Lancelot so that the emergency transfer at the rear could proceed smoothly. Da-da-da-da. A brand new magazine was reloaded. Norris took a deep breath and focused his attention on scanning the darkness of the forest. Then, he pulled the trigger. Another barrage of bullet screens was launched, but Lancelot was nowhere to be seen in front of the barrage of bullet screens. Norris furrowed his brows for a moment before relaxing them. Immediately after, the Zagu-I put down the 120mm machine gun in its hands and took 2 steps back. The single eye slowly turned left and right a few times before it retreated again. 1 step. Step by step, it maintained a cautious posture as it retreated. The 120mm machine gun in its hands was slightly lowered, and the muzzle was always ready to be raised and fired at any time. Norris' idea was simple. Since the Zagu-I's speed and agility could not compare to Lancelot's, then he would directly use the stupidest method, which was to only defend around the escort team and buy time for the Dora transport aircraft to load. Norris did not think that he was very good at this point, and he knew that the enemy would definitely have guessed it. But this might be the best method that Norris could think of at the moment. This tropical rainforest was no longer the home ground of the Zagu-I, but the smaller and more mobile Lancelot's home ground. Its height was no more than 5 meters, but in this tropical rainforest that was more than 20 meters tall, it was like a fish in water. Did it become a turtle? Not far away, Lancelot hid in the canopy of a big tree. Ray Minkai's eyes fell on the screen as he watched the thermal image of the Zagu-I gradually retreating. After a moment of silence, Ray Minkai laughed. Ha! As long as you stay close to them, do you think Lancelot can't seize the mysterious goods? Isn't it too simple? Lancelot flipped his hands and put the radiation vibroblade back into the scabbards on both sides of the cockpit. Then, Lancelot's right hand touched his waist, and the Vari's rifle that he rarely used appeared in his hand. Lancelot raised the Vari's rifle with both hands and pointed it at Apsalas that was still hovering above the rainforest. Buzz! There was a slight buzzing sound, and the body of the Vari's rifle immediately unfolded into a bracket-like mechanism. In a few seconds, it transformed from a backward extending posture to a forward extending posture and wrapped around the muzzle. In the blink of an eye, the bracket-like mechanism merged with the muzzle, and the barrel more than doubled from its original length of more than 1 meter. At the same time, a high-precision optical scope with a precision design style popped out from the top of the Vari's rifle. Beep beep. While the Vari's rifle unfolded into this new form, Ray Minkai also saw a moving aperture in front of him. In just a few seconds, it quickly stopped in the center of the screen and caught Apsilas in the sky. Royd, let me see how powerful your new toy is. This was a new weapon that Royd designed after receiving part of the MS information from the UC era, especially the information about the sniper gym. The small body of the Lancelot and the other KMF machines allowed them to take the initiative in certain environments, but the most important factor, firepower, was a bit of a pity. It was not that there were no KMF machines that could achieve high firepower, but they were all concentrated in the hands of very few people. The rest of the people, especially the soldiers, used KMF machines, at best, were rocket launchers. This kind of approach, idea, and design concept was nothing, but after coming into contact with other worlds that also used mechas for war, Royd knew. The ideals he held on to had no end. Therefore, Royd, who was unwilling to admit defeat, began a new round of design. The Vari's rifle used by Lancelot at the moment was Royd's trial work after his worldview was impacted. The Vari's Rifle Model 3 was a new weapon designed to adapt to and meet the multiple combat requirements in complex battlefield environments by combining various components installed on the gun body. Now, it was time for Lancelot to use the long-range sniping ability. However, when Ray Minkai was ready and waiting for the Dora transport plane carrying the mysterious cargo to appear, a violent explosion suddenly came from the other side of the escort force. At the same time, before the sound of the explosion had completely subsided, an even more intense battle followed. "Is it Shiro Amada?" A trace of surprise flashed in Ray Minkai's eyes. He didn't expect them to come so quickly. However, when he thought about it, a Apsilas in the sky was like the brightest star in the night sky. It was impossible to ignore him. As long as he was used as a road sign, even if Shiro Amada and the others didn't know the situation here, they would probably think that the thing they were looking for would appear here. Then, what are you going to do, Mr. Tiger King of Gion? The arrival of Shiro Amada and the others didn't affect Ray Minkai's next move. On the contrary, he was more curious about Norris's choice. Damn it! The Federation's main force found this place so quickly? Norris gritted his teeth. Massid, how long will the loading operation take? A trace of hesitation flashed across Norris's face, but he still asked in the end. 5 minutes. It'll only take 5 minutes to complete. Massid knew the current situation was urgent, so he quickly gestured. 5 minutes? Norris showed a trace of hesitation in his eyes. Now he was faced with a choice. Should he turn around and face the Federation's main force, or should he stay here and guard against that terrifying small aircraft's sneak attack? To the current Norris, these two choices were incomparably difficult, because, no matter which one he chose, it meant that the Doral transport aircraft would be exposed to another wave of enemies. Norris couldn't take this risk. However, just as Norris was in a dilemma, Iona's voice suddenly sounded. Colonel Norris, I'll be in charge of the Federation's main force. Although Apsilas doesn't have any weapons installed, its armor should be able to withstand for a while. Miss Ina, please don't. Our mission is only to bring the X-3 back. There's no need to bring this aircraft. Norris paused, quickly searching for a suitable adjective in his heart, and continued, There's no need to bring this precious experimental aircraft into a dangerous situation. But, this X-3 engine is especially important to Brother's research. We must bring it back. Ina remembered what Kenya's told her before leaving and immediately denied Norris' words. She directly lowered Apsilas' altitude and rushed towards the Gouda that Shiro Amada was piloting like a rapidly falling meteor. Hey, don't be so agitated. Apsaras's sudden attack startled Lei Minkai, as well as Shiro Amada, who was fighting with the escort team. Captain Amada, disperse. Lyote's eyes widened as he loudly warned. Whoosh, whoosh. The moment the huge Apusilas fell rapidly, it was as terrifying as a comet falling to Earth. In just a blink of an eye, Apusilas fell to the area where the 6th and 8th teams were fighting with the escort team. Then, Iona's gaze focused and her right hand pressed a button without hesitation. Boom! A strong stream of particles rushed out from the bottom of Apusilas and created a terrifying particle storm in the narrow distance between Apusilas and the ground. The power of this particle storm was so strong that it could instantly raise the dense forest where the 6th and 8th teams were hiding to the ground and blow away all 6 Gauda. In an instant, the area within 100 meters with Apusilas as the center was turned into a mess. Seeing it with my own eyes and watching anime are two different things. Through the sniping scope, Ray Minkai also saw the moment Apusilas went berserk. Although this model of Apusilas was not equipped with weapons, it could indeed take care of most threats by surprise. Tot-a-tot. Suddenly, a burst of fire exploded in the dense forest behind Lancelot. It was machine gun fire. Although wood chips and leaves were flying around Lancelot, Ray Minkai remained unmoved. This was because he knew that the shooting wasn't aimed at him. It was just a meaningless and random shooting. In other words, the opponent did not find Lancelot's trace and was just shooting at the dense forest. The purpose of this was not to force Lancelot out, but to stall for time. Yes. Apusilas suddenly went berserk and blew away the 6th and 8th teams, temporarily losing their combat power. Now, only Lancelot could pose a threat to the Dora transport aircraft. As long as they could delay Lancelot, the Dora transport aircraft would safely take off. However, no matter when it was, reality was always cruel. Boom! With the X-3 engine installed, the Dora transport aircraft lifted off. Apusilas restrained the 6th and 8th teams, while Norris took another Zagui to quickly close in on the area where Lancelot was. He did not hesitate to pour out all the ammunition in his hand, showing a posture of not giving up until the rainforest was razed to the ground. Tot-a-tot! The whistling bullets frantically broke through the trees in front of them. Wood chips splashed as they brushed past Lancelot. Seeing more and more bullets fly past Lancelot, Norris' heart calmed down a little. As long as he continued to maintain this intensity of fire suppression, even Lancelot with excellent maneuverability would not have a chance to cause any trouble to the Dora transport aircraft. Little did he know that it was just as he had said before. The ideal was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. Amidst this barrage of bullets, the small pure white body suddenly flipped over and raised the 2.5-meter-long rifle in its hand amidst the dense barrage of bullets. Tot-a-tot! Tot-a-tot! Boom! Boom! At this moment, the high-explosive bullets fired by the 2 Zagui hit Lancelot without any accident and set off a burst of explosions that was enough to destroy Lancelot. Did it work? Norris' eyes widened slightly. He never thought that Lancelot would actually stop and turn around at this critical moment, raise the muzzle, and assume a shooting posture. Isn't this courting death? As soon as this thought appeared, it was shattered by a beam of light that broke through the thick smoke caused by the explosion of the high-explosive bullets. Buzz! This beam of light unexpectedly broke through the smoke and flew past the 2 Zagui toward the sky behind them. Not good. The Dora transport aircraft. Norris's eyes were suddenly filled with shock. The next second, the Dora transport aircraft with the X-3 engine was like a bird with broken wings, plunging into the rainforest below. Chapter 301. Under the setting sun. The huge Apsaras dragged a trail of smoke and slowly landed in a dense forest with few people. Ka-Zila. With a soft sound of mechanical movement and a burst of deflation, the cockpit of this huge Apsaras slowly opened. A girl wearing a Guion pilot uniform also walked out of the gradually open door. And the first thing she did when she walked out of the cockpit was to immediately look at the outer armor on the right side of Apsaras. only to see that there was a land-type Zagu with only the upper body hanging there. "Colonel Norris, are you okay?" Looking at the broken and dazzling wounds on the land-type Zagu, the girl's eyes showed a trace of horror. She couldn't help but recall the scene not long ago. It was the moment when the X-3 engine was finally loaded and the Dora transport plane that took off quickly was shot down. How is this possible? The light beam that shot down the Dora transport plane gradually faded, and the thick smoke that was broken by it also dispersed the fog that shrouded Lancelot at this moment. And in this rapidly dispersing thick fog, a translucent light shield with flowing fluorescence blocked between Lancelot and the two land-type Zagu in a way that was beyond Norris' current understanding. Although he didn't understand how this light shield appeared, as long as he saw that under the light shield, Lancelot was unscathed, Norris knew that his and his teammates' attacks didn't cause much damage to the opponent at all. Attack! 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 Without hesitation, Norris, who didn't feel frustrated because of the Dora transport plane that landed in the rainforest, immediately shouted out his thoughts at the moment. Da-da-da! As soon as Norris' voice fell, the 120mm machine guns in the hands of the two land-type Zagu burst out flames of different lengths, and all the ammunition they carried poured out towards Lancelot. However, this whistling sound came again and again, and the invincible attack in the past encountered a setback. Just as Norris had witnessed, the two Zagu's attacks were completely blocked by the strange and mysterious barrier. Even if the high explosive shells fired by the Zagu were enough to easily destroy the Type 61 tank, it was still deflected by the seemingly thin layer of strange light shield that was actually extremely hard. Boom! 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 The explosions caused by the high explosive shells struck the barrier one after another, but Norris' heart only grew colder and colder. Even though he had personally witnessed Lancelot, who was behind the barrier of light, being pushed back by the force of the explosion, and even being pushed back by the force of the explosion, Norris could not help but feel the chill in his heart. It was too hard. It was too solid. Norris couldn't understand why that damned light barrier had appeared, or how it had appeared. He knew that if it wasn't for this damned light barrier, the small body in front of him that wasn't even considered mysterious would definitely be destroyed by the 120mm machine gun in the hands of the land-type Zagu. However, it was because of this damned light barrier that his wish could never come true. Crack! Suddenly, the other land-type Zagu that was attacking Lancelot along with Norris had emptied its ammunition. Not good. Be careful. Norris was shocked. The moment he opened his mouth to warn, a shadow flashed under the light barrier without any warning. In the next second, the land-type Zagu that had emptied its ammunition seemed to have been hit by a strong force, and was sent flying backwards. It only came to a stop after it crashed into dozens of trees. As for the pilot sitting inside, even if he didn't die, he wouldn't be too far off. Damn it! Norris' gaze didn't linger on his unlucky teammate for a moment, because he had already seen Lancelot that had been hiding under the strange light barrier finally appear in front of him, and that damned light barrier seemed to have disappeared. In other words, now was his chance. At least, Norris thought so. It was now or never. After realizing this, Norris launched another attack. Da-da-da! The 120mm machine gun's flames were once again spat out. However, in the next second, Norris quickly controlled the aircraft to raise the 120mm machine gun in his hands and threw it towards Lancelot. Then, the moment the 120mm machine gun flew out of his hands, Norris land-type Zagu bent down and picked up the heat axe that had fallen on the ground when the land-type Zagu was sent flying. Virum. As the heat axe's blade heated up, the land-type Zagu's backpack thruster roared. Prepare to die. Norris let out a furious roar. The Zagu-2, which had soared into the air, brandished the thermal axe in its hands. In the instant that the 120mm machine gun smashed into the light barrier, it ferociously hacked down towards Lancelot. Boom! The hot heat axe's blade split open the 120mm machine gun and detonated the remaining ammunition on the 120mm machine gun, and fiercely chopped down on the light barrier. Crack! At this moment, Norris seemed to have heard the sound of something breaking. Success? As this thought came to his mind, Norris realized that something was wrong. Yes. Behind this caw sound, there was a series of rumbling sounds that went from subtle to loud. Moreover, it sounded so quickly that it seemed to have happened in an instant. Virum! Virum! Numerous streaks of red light tore through the smoke between the land-type Zagu 2 and the light barrier without any warning. At the same time, while Norris was completely defenseless, the streaks of red light frantically traversed through the land-type Zagu 2's body. Swish! 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 The armor that was so sturdy that it could even ignore most of the firepower in the past was now like a fragile piece of paper. It was cut and shredded by the red lights until it was completely peeled off from the land-type Zagu eye. This moment, to Norris, seemed like a long time had passed, but in fact it was only a matter of a few breaths. Boom! A loud explosion and violent vibration pulled Norris' mind back to reality from what seemed to be a long time ago. "Colonel Norris, quickly catch Apsila's." Iona's voice suddenly sounded, and also brought a ray of light to Norris' eyes. Norris, who subconsciously pushed the control lever until he fainted, did not realize that he had successfully caught Apsila's, who came to rescue him in a moment of life and death. The billowing black smoke emanating from Apusara's body almost covered the entire sky. It also covered the figure of the land-type Zagu 2 that had caught the armor on his body. On the ground, Lancelot, who was standing in the pile of debris cut off from the land-type Zagu eye, slowly put down the radiation vibrasword in his hand. Did he escape? Haha. Forget it. I'll let you go this time. Ray Minkai slowly retracted his thumb from the button to activate the light wing and shook his head slightly. Now, relying on Lancelot's light wing system to chase after Apsila's, the success rate was undoubtedly high. But on the other hand, Ray Minkai also had to risk exposing Lancelot to the Earth Federation army. There was no doubt. As long as Lancelot, who had high mobility and small size while maintaining a powerful firepower and other advantages, appeared in the Federation's line of sight, it would definitely attract a lot of attention with ulterior motives. This was not what Ray Minkai wanted to see. Before figuring out the dark secrets of this world, Ray Minkai did not intend to disclose his identity. Well, now let's go and get the Zagu eye that was kicked away by Lancelot. At least, driving the Zagu eye back would make it easier to explain my actions during this period of time. How Ray Minkai used the Zagu eye to cover up Lancelot's existence was another matter. Under Iona's call, Norris, who was dragged out from the damaged and almost scrapped Zagu eye, finally woke up slowly. Where is this? Norris's eyes, which were initially confused, quickly became clear. Especially when he saw half of a Zagu 2 hanging on Apu Thalas's body, the memories from before came flooding back to him. Is that so? Did I lose the battle? After sighing, Norris also accepted reality. Moreover, when he shifted his gaze from the Zagu eye to the woman sitting on the side, he immediately recognized the woman's identity. You are Miss Ina Sakhaline? The woman nodded slowly. Yes. I am Ina Sakhaline. Nice to meet you, Colonel Norris. I didn't expect that we would meet under such circumstances. The woman, Ina, smiled slightly and sighed somewhat helplessly. Norris slightly pulled the corner of his mouth. For a veteran of the battlefield like him, such circumstances were nothing out of the ordinary. I've made a fool of myself in front of Miss Ina. Norris slowly took in a breath and looked around. He realized that other than Apsila's and half of the Zagu eye, there was only him and Ina. Miss Ina, do you know Masud and the others? Iona's expression was slightly sluggish, then she shook her head. Although she didn't say anything, her expression already made Norris understand. Is that so? Masad and the others have already died for their country? Norris sighed and then tried to stand up. Colonel Norris, you can't move as you wish. You must now wait for the arrival of reinforcements. Ina saw the sweat quickly appearing on Norris's forehead and immediately reminded Norris to pay attention to his body. No. Don't worry, Miss Ina. Right now Norris Sakhaline, have been ordered to report. From now on, I will be Miss Ina Sakhaline's bodyguard and fight for the ideals of Miss Ina Sakhaline and Major General Kinnias Sakhaline. Enduring the intense pain from his wound, Norris Barkard loudly declared to Ina Sakhaline, the person he will be loyal to in the future. Colonel Norris, Miss Ina? You can just call me Norris. Ina looked at Norris, who had a straight face, and helplessly shook her head. All right, Norris. You better lie down now. The reinforcements sent by Major General Kinnias should be arriving soon. Yes. In the mountains. In the hidden secret base, a sharp shattering sound broke the silence. What a surprise! A languid female voice slowly sounded from the corner, and at the same time, a graceful body wrapped in a decent dress walked out from the shadows. Under the flame-like bright red hair, the pair of purple gemstones that flickered with confusion were also sizing up the Major General, who swept all the glassware on the table to the ground with an angry face. I didn't think that the always wise and calm Major General Kinnias Sakhaline would have such a side. You really surprised me. Shut up, Miss Q. With a furious roar, Kinnias, who had a struggling expression on his face, quickly calmed down. He slowly raised his head and looked at the graceful woman whose every move was enough to charm all the men in the world. Welcome, sir, Miss Q. I hope that everything here will be able to satisfy you. Kinnias calmly raised his foot and stepped over the pile of shattered glassware and stood in front of the woman he called Miss Q. Oh. The corner of the fiery red woman's eyes twitched as she glanced at Kinnias' face that had already calmed down with interest. Her eyes revealed a trace of undisguised probing light. Thus, the fiery red woman slowly opened her mouth. I heard from General Kilian. Major General Kinnias, your research project can give the Guion Duchy the power to decide the outcome of this battle? Yes. Facing the fiery red woman's question, Kinnias nodded and said confidently, For the glory of Sakhaline, and for the supreme glory of Guion. It seems that Major General is really confident. But now, the X3 engine that Major General regards as the key to completing Apsaras has already been taken down by the Federation Army. The fiery red woman's purple gems-like eyes slowly moved as they swept across Kinnias' calm face again and again. I wonder where Major General Kinnias' confidence comes from? The fiery red woman's question made Kinnias silent. Yes. According to the original plan, the X3 engine was a necessity for Apsaras in the future. But now, such an important key had fallen into the hands of the Federation. Can Apsaras still continue? If not, then Guion, no, it should be said that the glory of the Sakhaline family will be gone. Kinnias slowly raised his gaze and looked at the fiery red woman's delicate face. Finally, his body slowly lowered. Caw creak. The glass shards scattered around Kinnias' feet made a slight squeezing sound. Traces of captivating red also dyed Kinnias' trousers red, but Kinnias remained unmoved. He raised his right hand as if he was worshipping and gently lifted the fiery red woman's right hand, then lightly tapped the back of her hand. I salute you, Miss Q. Chapter 302. The raging flames were extinguished by a sufficient amount of extinguishing agent. Standing on the edge of the wreckage, a group of Federal soldiers sweating profusely, but they didn't dare to be careless. They were holding fire extinguishers in their hands as they patrolled the wreckage that was burned to the point where only the skeleton was left. They extinguished all the sparks that came out of the wreckage. Not far away from the wreckage, there were 6 Gauda Marines and a Marine Zagu II. That was the active duty MS of the Guion army. In this war, although there were a few cases like this where the enemy's MS was completely captured, it was still considered a rarity. After all, not everyone could capture the active duty MS of the Guion army without any injuries. Hey! I didn't expect the reporter lieutenant to be so capable. He just cleaned up the obstacles on the team's way, but he brought back a big fish. Mostra yelled at Sam, drawing a lot of attention. This was a great opportunity to gain face. Although Ray Minkai was only a temporary member of the 6th Squad, in the eyes of outsiders, Ray Minkai was a real teammate of the 6th Squad. Therefore, this Marine Zagu II was undoubtedly regarded by other squads as the achievement of all the members of the 6th Squad. On the other side, Ray Minkai, Leonti, and Shiro Amada gathered together. Second Lieutenant, you also saw the huge body before? Leonti pondered for a moment, and when he spoke again, he also said the words he knew. Huge MA. You should have seen it too, right? Second Lieutenant. Ray Minkai glanced at Shiro Amada and nodded silently. Captain, I did see the huge MA. I didn't expect Guion to build such a huge MA. Although from our first contact with the experience, this huge MA does not seem to be equipped with any weapons, but the huge body is impossible to ignore. Yes. Second Lieutenant is right. Captain Leonti. In the previous contact, this huge MA only relied on an impact of an unknown force field to suppress our 2 MS squad. If it weren't for the second lieutenant ambushing not far away, we would have lost the opportunity to seize such goods. Shiro Amada agreed with Ray Minkai's words. In his opinion, the first appearance of Apsaras was amazing. Without relying on any weapons, just relying on the impact caused by the unknown force, the 2 MS squads were almost paralyzed. Such a terrifying weapon was really unforgettable for Shiro Amada. I agree with this point. It's just, can such goods still be found? Leonti nodded, and then looked at the soldiers who were rummaging through the wreckage. Maybe. Ray Minkai shook his head and didn't have much hope. In the previous sniping, Ray Minkai did not deliberately aim at the cockpit of the Doral transport aircraft. Instead, he chose to aim at the wing, which was a more difficult target. Even so, the sound of the huge Doral transport aircraft crashing into the rainforest was loud enough. There was a roar. The Doral transport plane, whose wings had been broken by Lancelot, exploded along with the cargo it was carrying. 2 captains. I found something. At this time, when the 3 of them were talking about what goods were loaded on the Dora, the soldiers who were searching the wreckage also came with good news. However, before Ray Minkai and the other 2 walked over to check it out, an order was passed to them from behind. Standby order? Are you kidding me? Leoroot took the order from the messenger, who was panting from running, and raised his doubts in surprise. Although today's operation was hindered by some obstacles, it was completed successfully in the end. Moreover, Leonti felt that if they could continue to move forward with this momentum, they might be able to advance the battle line a little. Let me see. Shiro Amada took the order and glanced at it. He was also a little surprised. The 6th Squad and the 8th Squad are on standby. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, after receiving the order, immediately set off to return to the station. After reading it, Shiro Amada didn't think much of it. He shook the order in his hand, looked at Ray Minkai and said, Second Lieutenant, it seems that your activity has attracted the attention of the captain. Ray Minkai smiled bitterly. He took the order, glanced at it, and shook his head. Maybe this is not a good thing. Leoroot laughed. Not a good thing? I don't think so. Then, Leonti patted Ray Minkai on the shoulder. Okay. Leave this to us. You should go back to the station. Ray Minkai pondered for a moment. No, let's see what we found in the wreckage first. In the end, Ray Minkai's proposal didn't yield any results. As soon as he saw the cargo container that was wrapped in countless melted metal, Ray Minkai knew that his plan to see the mysterious goods in a short time was probably not going to work. In this temporarily set-up frontier, there were no large industrial machines that could be used to cut. Therefore, the only thing they could do was to transport the container wrapped in melted metal back to the station and deal with it later. It seems that you can't escape, Second Lieutenant. Leonti laughed, then straightened his face and saluted Ray Minkai. Then, I'll see you later. Second Lieutenant. See you later. Captain Leonti and Captain Amada. See you later. Second Lieutenant. After the rain, the muddy road once again raised a burst of mud, and in the depths of the dense forest on both sides of the muddy road, under the control of the standby command, Lancelot was slowly wrapped in a layer of liquid metal, and quietly disappeared from the rainforest in the blink of an eye. The road was bumpy. The degree of bumpiness made Ray Minkai, who was sitting in the car, think that it was better to walk than to sit in the jeep driving on the muddy road. Fortunately, after entering the 30-kilometer defensive range of the encampment, the level of the road became better. Ray Minkai heaved a sigh of relief. Otherwise, Ray Minkai, who couldn't kill the fierce MS battle, would be defeated by the bumpy road. Thank you for your hard work, Second Lieutenant. Looking at Ray Minkai, who was covered in mud, Captain Kojima also shook his head helplessly. The weather here was really changeable. No matter how many times the road was repaired, it was bound to fail under this strange weather change. Do it, Second Lieutenant. Do you want a glass of water? I think you're in a tough spot. Kojima asked Ray Minkai to sit down, got up, took the paper cup next to him, and filled a glass of water for Ray Minkai. Thank you, Captain. No. This is what I should do. Compared to me sitting here, you soldiers who are fighting on the front line should rest the most. Captain Kojima waved his hand. Then, Kojima fumbled for a while from the pile of documents on the table, and handed a document to Ray Minkai. Second Lieutenant. This is a piece of information sent from the headquarters a few days ago. I think you need to take a look. Ray Minkai was taken aback. He was a little puzzled, but he still put the cup aside and took the document. He flipped through it. After a long time, Ray Minkai, who was reading the information, showed a dignified face. Captain. When did this happen? Kojima reached out and pushed his glasses. This happened after you intercepted the suspected high-power energy output device. From the information, maybe our previous conclusion is going to be overturned. The high-power energy output device is probably just a cover. We have been deceived. Ray Minkai's brows slowly frowned, but soon relaxed. Captain. Are you saying that this is a diversion by the enemy? Well, there is this possibility. Also, didn't you find a secret stronghold of G1 and take it down? At the same time, you seem to have gained a lot of loot. Yes. But we need to use the heavy construction machinery here to open the metal shell to know what is inside. Ray Minkai suddenly remembered that if the White Cat Zero did not go to the secret base where Aina was, there would be no need for such a troublesome process to know what it was. Heavy construction machinery? It seems that the loot this time is a bit troublesome. Go do it. Yes. In the shadows, a ghostly white shadow flashed by. Hey, did you see anything? The John soldier standing next to the intersection poked his companion next to him. What? See what? There is nothing? The companion shook his head, casually glanced around, and asked inexplicably. It seems like something passed by there. This statement made the companion sneered a few times. Are you not full yet? There is nothing here. Even if there is, it is probably Miss Iona's White Cat. White Cat. The John soldier was stunned, then shook his head. Maybe. Recently, Miss Ina went out to test the body and encountered the Federation Army's Miss Squad. Now she is resting in a secret place. I don't know if this news is true or not. Don't talk nonsense. Let's take care of ourselves first. The discussion gradually became softer until it could no longer be heard. Only then did the small white ghost-like figure jump out of the pipe on the ceiling. That human woman was defeated? I'm afraid it is Guy's credit. The golden pupils looked at the position of the two John soldiers, then turned to the deeper part of the tunnel. Not long ago, a very familiar aura suddenly appeared here, but after a detailed search, I did not find anything. It is very strange. The white ghost was the white cat State Zero who sneaked in here as a stray cat. It raised its small head, silently looked at the deep tunnel for a while, then slowly lifted its feet, jumped on top of the pipe again, and quickly ran into the depths of the tunnel. In fact, the white cat State Zero was cautious about the deep tunnel in front of it. Especially after the sudden appearance and disappearance of the aura, the white cat State Zero became more cautious in its heart. What on earth is hidden here? With such a question, the white cat State Zero followed the pipe tunnel on the ceiling to a room. Click. Suddenly, the door of the room suddenly made a sound. It was the sound of the lock being unlocked. Phineas, I didn't expect your ideas to be so unique. Even in this chaotic world, your way of thinking is still so interesting. As the door opened, a lazy woman's voice came from inside. This voice. Upon hearing this voice, the white cat State Zero's pupils suddenly shrank into a narrow line. It seemed to remember this voice. Then, under the gaze of the white cat State Zero, the graceful figure also turned out of the open door. The fiery red hair gently fluttering in the air, the pair of gem-like eyes, and the arc at the corner of the mouth suddenly made the white cat State Zero let out an angry roar. Who? Who is hiding there? The flame-like woman suddenly raised her head and stared at the pipe lines on the ceiling. Her eyes gradually became cold, and Phineas, who walked out of the room after her, could not help but feel a trace of deep cold murderous intent. Dear madam, what happened? Phineas frowned, glanced at the empty surroundings, and asked carefully. The flame-red woman did not answer, but just stared at the pipe channels on the ceiling. Meow, a weak and somewhat pitiful cry gradually came from the pipe channel under the cold gaze of the flame-red woman. Then, a shadow swayed, and Phineas saw a small head slowly extend out of the pipeline. It looked at him carefully, and also looked at the fiery red woman beside him. Seeing this scene, Phineas breathed a sigh of relief. Madam, this is the kitten that my sister recently adopted. It probably ran out because it was starving. Starving? The flame-red woman lowered her gaze and looked at Phineas, her eyes full of questions. Yes. Ina has recently been carrying out a mission to test Apsaras, so she probably did not prepare enough food for this kitten. Phineas nodded, looking at the small cowering figure above his head. Is that so? The flame-red woman seemed to have accepted this explanation. She raised her eyebrows and said, It seems that we have to find your sister quickly, Phineas. Otherwise, not only will this poor kitten starve to death, but I'm afraid that even Apsaras's follow-up plan will be affected. Hearing this, Phineas bowed slightly and saluted the flame-red woman. As you wish, dear madam. The storm ended just like that, until the flame-red woman and Phineas figures completely disappeared into the depths of the pipe channel. The white cat, State Zero, lying on the pipe channel, gradually relaxed. When the fur on its body stood up, the white cat's eyes emitted a trace of murderous intent. Miss Q, I didn't expect to meet you in this strange world. Chapter 303. At the station of the Mechanical Mixed Brigade. All the soldiers of the Mechanical Mixed Brigade cancelled their leave and followed the first-level combat readiness order of Captain Xiao Dao. They doubled the security range of the entire station from the original 30 kilometers. Meanwhile, the core security circle of the Mechanical Mixed Brigade's encampment was filled with capable MS teams, forming an impenetrable defense circle. Although such a formation was a bit exaggerated, Captain Xiao Dao felt that it was necessary. Not long ago, the engineering team responsible for studying the high-power energy output device seized before took over the iron lump that Ray Minkai seized again. They began to study how to take out the thing wrapped in the melted metal shell. As a result, after a period of research and work, an unknown device that was more sophisticated and rigorous than the high-power energy output device seized before appeared in front of everyone's eyes. As soon as it appeared, a shocking fact was placed in front of Captain Xiao Dao, Ray Minkai, and others. The high-power energy output device seized earlier was just a replica of this unknown device that looked extremely sophisticated and advanced. In a strict sense, these high-power energy output devices that looked like some kind of large-scale machinery might just be some low-quality counterfeit product. Although this conclusion seemed a bit illusory and out of place, after seeing the unidentified device dug out from the iron lump, everyone realized a conclusion in their hearts. That was, when everyone thought that the high-power energy output devices must be the trump card of the Gion army hidden in the Southeast Asian front, the real trump card appeared in front of them unknowingly, and the so-called trump card was slapped into the big hole of counterfeit products. Thus, when he realized that Ji Weng's army might choose to do something crazy in order to take back this trump card, Commander Xiao Dao immediately issued a Level 1 combat readiness order and truthfully requested for reinforcements from headquarters. Second Lieutenant, this time, it's all thanks to you. I didn't expect that just approving your application to go out and collect materials would usher in such a rich harvest. Standing in front of the simple factory temporarily built by the engineering team, Xiao Dao sighed slightly. In his opinion, Ray Minkai's effort was probably enough to match the efforts of the entire mechanical mixed brigade for several months. No, Captain. You're being too serious. I just happened to be there at the right time. In response to Xiao Dao's praise, Ray Minkai just shook his head lightly. To be able to obtain such a harvest was because he was familiar with the direction of the plot. However, even so, the appearance of this unknown device made Ray Minkai feel a little uncomfortable and anxious. As the White Cat State Zero was not by his side, Ray Minkai could not immediately distinguish what was inside this unknown device. Moreover, it was not convenient for Ray Minkai to take out his own equipment in this station. After all, there were too many eyes here. Lei Minkai wasn't confident that he wouldn't be discovered by others when he was investigating the unknown device. This was the conclusion they came to after repeatedly confirming that Captain Xiao Dao was constantly increasing the number of troops stationed around the simple factory. Second Lieutenant, I'll have to trouble with you. Moreover, there seemed to be a new order from the headquarters. At that time, you will be assigned to your unit. Suddenly, a mysterious smile appeared on Xiao Dao's face. What? The unit you belong to? Lei Minkai was taken aback and asked subconsciously. Captain, I'm just a war reporter. How could I be assigned to the combat unit? Glancing at Lei Minkai's dumbfounded expression, Xiao Dao's mood suddenly improved. Ha 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 ha. Second Lieutenant, if you're just a war reporter, I'll think it's a waste of talent. After laughing for a while, Xiao Dao's eyes showed a glimmer of light. Second Lieutenant, since you sat on Gao Da's seat, the results have proven that you're a qualified, no, an excellent pilot. In this day of increasingly intense war, if I let a hero who may become the end of this war just run around with a camera as a commander, I will never forgive myself for turning a blind eye to your existence. Hearing this, Ray Minkai twitched the corner of his mouth. Even if, after that, I will be sacrificed on the battlefield? Xiao Dao was silent for a moment, but still nodded firmly. Yes. Second Lieutenant, this is war. In order to win the final victory, and in order to end this war that was started to fulfill the ambitions of some people and caused countless people to fall into disaster, I must make some choices. After a pause, Xiao Dao's voice suddenly became low. Even if I have to personally send my subordinates to the battlefield one by one. Xiao Dao's statement made Ray Minkai feel a little heavy. He knew. As early as the beginning of the war, Captain Xiao Dao had lost too many subordinates in this war. It was not until the end of the war, in the final battle with Apsaras, that he made a choice. Now, this Captain, Xiao Dao, was far from reaching that stage. After a moment of silence, Ray Mingkai slowly nodded. Captain, I already understand the mission. In that case, which squad will I belong to? You'll know when the time comes. Second Lieutenant, you'll get along with them. Xiao Dao did not reveal Ray Mingkai's latest order at all. He just smiled mysteriously and turned to leave. Looking at Xiao Dao's back, Ray Mingkai looked down at the camera hanging around his neck and suddenly laughed out loud. It seems that I don't need this camera anymore. This beautiful wish was not realized after all. After all, during this time, Ray Mingkai took the camera everywhere in this station, and his interview had been accepted by everyone. As long as they saw Ray Mingkai appear with the camera, the soldiers who were on duty would take the initiative to ask Ray Mingkai to take a few photos for them. For these requests, Ray Mingkai certainly would not refuse. In addition to facing the attacks of the Gion army every day, the soldiers in Southeast Asia also had to face the harsh environment of the rainforest. Maybe during a mission, they did not die in the hands of the Gion army, but were accidentally swallowed by the rainforest. For this reason, the soldiers wanted to record their existence as much as possible, and the arrival of Ray Mingkai was an opportunity. Take it slow. Everyone has one. Don't rush. After taking out the camera holder, Ray Mingkai found a place with good lighting conditions and began to take photos of the soldiers. Unexpectedly, more and more soldiers came after hearing the news, and almost filled the corner used for taking personal photos. Hey! Those bastards from that area! What are you doing? Go back to your duty! As more and more people gathered, it immediately attracted the dissatisfaction of a certain old man. The soldiers turned around to see who was the one who was making a ruckus. When they saw the old man with slanted eyebrows and a cowboy hat on his head, they suddenly trembled. They quickly smiled apologetically and pulled away their comrade, who didn't know what was going on. Business is pretty good? Second Lieutenant Reporter. After the last soldier left, an old man's voice suddenly sounded behind Ray Mingkai, and Ray Mingkai vaguely smelled a hint of alcohol. I'm done for the time being. Ray Mingkai nodded and put away the camera holder. He turned around and showed a confused expression. Do you know where they sell film? Old man. The pair of cloudy eyes under the cowboy hat stared at Ray Mingkai. All of a sudden, laughter rang out. Ha ha ha. I didn't expect someone to use film to take photos in this era. Interesting. Interesting. The old man's laughter continued, but this laughter was powerful. Are you surprised? After all, sometimes the existence of film is more reliable than precision electronic part. Ray Mingkai raised the camera in his hand. Haha, you're right. It just so happens that I have a batch of film here that has been stored for a long time. Are you interested? Second Lieutenant. The old man raised his right hand and pushed the cowboy hat with his index finger. Of course. If it can be used, maybe I can give a very good price. I don't know what you think, old man? Haha. Good. Follow me. It seems that Second Lieutenant is also a straightforward person. How about this? You help me do something, and then I'll give you the film at half price. How about it? Oh? Then I'll have to think about it. The scorching sun slowly rose into the sky. In the entire station, except for the soldiers who returned to the resting area, the rest of the soldiers could only stay at their posts to perform guard duties. Under such circumstances, the entire encampment fell into silence. In the past, the airframes that took turns to repair had already been repaired overnight after the first-level combat readiness order was issued, and they were sent to the alert area to perform tasks. In this quiet and tense atmosphere, A camera placed in a secluded corner was faithfully recording most of the situation in this station in a position that could capture most of the situation in this station. As the sun in the sky slowly set in the west, the cool shade of the trees also shrouded this position. At this time, as the sound of footsteps slowly sounded, a figure appeared under the shade of the trees. He looked around, as if to confirm that there would not be too many people coming here, then he casually found a place here, half lay down, and took out the book in his trouser pocket, opened it, and carefully read it. This, perhaps, was the portrayal of a young man who took advantage of the rare free time to read books in his busy schedule. However, this portrayal was destined not to last. A few minutes later, a woman with fiery red hair, a dignified face, and wearing a sweater strode from not far away and came to the front of the young man who was flipping through the book. Cough. Captain, there is a document here that needs you to confirm. The dignified woman said so. The young man raised his gaze, looked at the document in the woman's hand, nodded, and took the document, looked at it, and after confirming that there was no problem with the content, he signed his name. Then, I won't disturb Captain's rest time. After the dignified woman took the document, she turned around and left. The young man, who regained his free time, picked up the book again and began to read the content in the book again. However, free time was destined to not be with this young man. When he gradually became intoxicated with the content of the book, two figures, one short and one tall, quietly slipped behind the young man from not far away. Then, the short figure paused, took a step forward, put on a posture of, I'm just looking around, and walked out from the young man's side. On the way, he also made a peace sign to the camera placed next to him. Immediately afterward, the tall figure also walked behind the short man, and when passing by the position of the camera, he even placed the indescribable map that he had treasured for a long time in front of the camera. For all of this, the young man, who was already intoxicated with the content of the book, had no idea. The intoxicated look on his face made the people who were hiding beside him surprised. What book is this kid reading? Why is he so fascinated? The old man with the water bottle in his hand took a big gulp of water and said with some dissatisfaction, Old man, why are you doing this? The captain didn't seem to have offended you, right? The dignified woman who came back frowned. In the beginning, when the old quartermaster suggested to test someone's attention, she maintained her opposition. But after seeing that the old quartermaster even pulled Ray Minkai in, the dignified woman who opposed nodded in agreement. Offend? No, your captain didn't offend me. I just want to test him. See, there's a second lieutenant reporter here, and he can take a short video or something for you to submit to the headquarters and let the officials sitting in the office see the situation on the front line. The old quartermaster grinned, revealing his jagged teeth. Is that really the case? The youngest, Negri, carefully raised his doubts. Idiot. If you don't believe me, you can ask this second lieutenant reporter from the headquarters. The old quartermaster slapped Negri and brought the topic to Ray Minkai, who was paying attention to the camera. The situation is indeed similar. Now with the situation clear, the core of the entire war has gradually shifted from the Earth to the universe. Therefore, in the future, resources will be provided to the universe army first. Ray Minkai said this calmly. How come? That's it. Negri. The dignified woman, Karen, casually placed the document in her hand on Negri's head and then looked at the old quartermaster. Old man, has the supply recently decreased? The old quartermaster smiled. He didn't confirm or deny it. But it was enough. It seems that this time our captain has to work hard. After Karen sighed secretly, she looked at Ray Minkai again. Second Lieutenant, let's begin. And then, the scene of the 8th Squad, Captain Shiro Amada's day, begins. Chapter 304. On the flat ground that was rolled back and forth by the road roller, all the members of the 8th Squad were lined up with serious expressions. They stood there waiting for the 8th Squad's captain, Shiro Amada's speech. Today was the day that the 8th Squad welcomed a new teammate again. Although the 8th Squad was already fully staffed before this, no one knew what kind of logic the higher-ups had in mind. The 5th Squad, which was already in a state of reconstruction, was directly merged with the 6th Squad and reorganized into a special mixed squadron directly under the captain, Xiao Dao. In addition to this special mixed squadron, the entire mechanical mixed brigade seemed to be ushering in a major reorganization. In this wave, the 8th Squad could be said to have the slightest change. Only a new pilot and Marine Gauda was assigned to enhance the 8th Squad's strength in future special missions. On this point, as long as one was not blind, one would know that the 8th Squad was about to face a serious and dangerous mission. Ahem. Shiro Amada, who stood in front of everyone, suddenly coughed a few times. The corner of his mouth moved and he said loudly, "They're here. Let's give a round of applause to the new members of our 8th Squad." Amidst the applause brought by Shiro Amada, an acquaintance walked over from a distance. His appearance made Shiro Amada's expression a little unnatural, but in the end, he endured it. "I'm Second Lieutenant Rei Minkai. From today onwards, please take care of me." The person who came was Rei Minkai. It turned out that the new deployment order mentioned by the captain, Xiao Dao, was to make Rei Minkai the 4th Marine Gauda in the 8th Squad. Of course, at the same time that Rei Minkai was assigned to the 8th Squad, Marine No. 3 Gauda, who he used in the 6th Squad, was also transferred to the 8th Squad. Moreover, in order to make up for the power vacuum caused by the transfer of Marine No. 3 Gauda, the headquarters heroically assigned the 5th Squad, which was still in a state of reconstruction, directly to the 6th Squad. This operation made Rei Minkai speechless, but at the same time, he also felt a sense of urgency. More and more outliers appeared in places that he couldn't see, and they quickly affected the direction of the world. The more it was like this, the more Rei Minkai felt that the timeline that he could still control might collapse. Cough, cough. This was Second Lieutenant Rei Minkai. From today onwards, he is a member of our 8th Squad. I hope everyone will take good care of Second Lieutenant Rei Minkai in the future. Those above are dismissed. Interestingly, when Rei Minkai was a little distracted, Shiro Amada, who was supposed to give a speech to motivate everyone, simply left a few words and ran away. Looking at Shiro Amada's slightly flustered back, everyone who was still acting solemnly suddenly burst into laughter. Rei Minkai, who had regained his senses, couldn't help but smile. There was no other reason. The reason why Shiro Amada had fled in such a flustered manner. It was a video that the old quartermaster had made when he pulled Rei Minkai, Karen, and the others over. The content of the video could be put aside for now, but at the end of the video there was a highlight that had to be mentioned. That was, in the last 30 seconds of the video, Shiro Amada actually put down the book in his hand, took out the clock pendant hanging around his neck, and showed a thoughtful look. The moment the beautiful pendant appeared, except for Sandus, everyone's gossipy heart suddenly burned. Therefore, Shiro Amada discovered that he was secretly photographed without knowing when cough, cough. Okay. Everyone, stop laughing at the captain. After all, the captain is also at that age. Rei Minkai, who knew who the owner of the pendant was, spoke up to exonerate Shiro Amada. Unexpectedly, the raging fire of gossip had been burned on him. "It sounds like you are very experienced, Second Lieutenant. I wonder if the Second Lieutenant also has a sweetheart?" Elidoya strode to Rei Minkai's side and hugged Rei Minkai tightly. Although Rei Minkai's current identity was a second lieutenant, due to the previous interview, the soldiers in this station did not feel alienated from Rei Minkai. Instead, they would joke with him from time to time. This was also the reason why Elidoya dared to mess around with Rei Minkai in front of everyone. "Sweetheart? Yes. Elidoya, aren't you the same?" Rei Minkai smiled slightly, and when he answered simply, he kicked the football back. The effect was remarkable. The moment the football was kicked back, Eladoya's gaze seemed to be a little weak, and he even subconsciously stole a glance at Karen. Then, he laughed heartily and began to meditate. Of course I have a sweetheart. Listen to me, she is an awe-inspiring and valiant woman. Oh? She sounds like a very good woman. I wonder which woman you have such a high opinion of, Eladoya? Rei-Minkai's lips curled up slightly, revealing a meaningful look. At this moment Eladoya was silent. It seemed that Eladoya did not have the courage to kick the football, let alone shoot the goal. Let's not talk about Eladoya. Second Lieutenant, what about you? I, on the other hand, am more interested in your sweetheart. Unexpectedly, while Eladoya was silent, Karen suddenly said something. Rei-Minkai was stunned, and then he smiled calmly. My sweetheart? Fine. Actually, it's not a big deal. She is a kind and beautiful woman, and at the same time, she is also the princess that I will protect for the rest of my life. Your Highness? It seems that you have a very high opinion of your sweetheart. Sir Knight. Eladoya opened his mouth. It was just that he simply thought that the princess that Rei-Minkai mentioned was only in the eye of the beholder. On this point, Karen, and even Sandus and Neguri, who remained silent, also thought the same. In this regard, Rei-Minkai did not explain further. It was a misunderstanding. Then, Sir Knight, are you ready to go? I believe that there will soon be a mission for Squad 8. Since Shiro Amada had slipped away, the responsibility of arranging the team's affairs naturally fell on Karen's shoulders. On standby. Also, I hope that everyone can call me by my name. Rei-Minkai raised his hand and saluted. While expressing his determination, he did not forget to correct the way everyone addressed him. Okay. Then, Kai, please advise me in the future. It seemed that more than half a month had passed since the last heavy rain. During this period, Rei-Minkai was ordered to be transferred to Squad 8 and became one of Shiro Amada's team members. Later, after accepting the mission to investigate the secret weapon of the Gion army, he followed Squad 8 to the depths of the tropical rainforest. Soon, with the help of advanced mechanized equipment, everyone who entered the depths of the rainforest was about to complete a journey through the rainforest. Of course, accompanying them was the guide team led by Chi-Chi. Rei-Minkai had forgotten about this female supporting character who had a considerable role in the original work, but when he saw her appear with the guide team, Rei-Minkai could not help but shake his head. This girl's unrequited love is probably going to be wasted. Shiro. According to the information provided by our companions, not long ago, a flash of light suddenly appeared in the sky, and then a sudden burst of flames drowned that place. Chi-Chi, who was standing on the cliff and talking to the shepherd boy who was pointing at the desert in the distance for a while, brought back a piece of information. Without thinking, Rei-Minkai knew that this should be the latest version of Apsara's 2. Rei-Minkai was not surprised by this expected answer, but he was also surprised. What was not surprising was that some things finally went according to the original plan. What was surprising was that the appearance of Apsara's 2 seemed to be a bit early. But when he thought about the outliers, including himself, this might be a reasonable and unexpected result. Kai, what do you think? Raising the binoculars and looking at the bottomless canyon in the distance, Shiro Amada's face was solemn. This was Rei-Minkai's first mission after joining Squad 8. After staying in the harsh rainforest for a while, everyone felt the difficulty of this mission more and more. Let's go check it out first. If we just stand here and look with the binoculars, we won't be able to see anything. Rei-Minkai put down the binoculars in his hand and looked back at Marine Gouda, who was half kneeling behind him. At this moment, Marine Gouda no longer had the number 06 on it. Instead, it was replaced by the number 08 painted on the shield. And its number in Squad 8 was Marine Gouda number 4, known as Meteor. This name was given by Eladoya when he pointed at the meteor hammer held by Gauda number 4. Although it was a bit reckless, it was unanimously approved by everyone. Therefore, Marine Gauda number 4 had a code name, Meteor. That's true. Kai, take your meteor. Let's go. Shiro Amada also had the same idea, so after the two reached an agreement, Squad 8 immediately changed from resting to mobile. However, after leaving the rainforest, Marine Gauda's condition seemed to be a bit bad. It was sand. Even if it was a seemingly calm desert, countless sand could inadvertently slip through the gaps in the dust barrier, which greatly affected the efficiency of Marine Gauda's operation. Quack, 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 quack. With a difficult whine, Shiro Amada helplessly patted the console in front of him, then opened the communication channel. Karen, Kai, Sandals, you go first. Let Eladoya and Michael stay to help me. You're here again? Captain. Your Marine Gauda seems to be at odds with this desert. Ray Minkai shook his head and couldn't help but tease Shiro Amada. Perhaps it was fate, but no matter how well prepared they were before they set off, Shiro Amada still failed in the areas where he should have failed. The only difference was that there were a lot more preparations to deal with emergencies. Sigh. It seems like it. Kai, you go first. There's not much time left. Under Shiro Amada's urging, the three Marine Gauda driven by Ray Minkai, Karen, and Sandals walked towards the canyon first. Captain, it should be okay, right? His airframe seems to be prone to failure. Karen raised her hand and pressed a row of buttons on the right side. While looking at the data fed back on the screen, she said, No. Captain's luck has always been good. It will be fine. As someone who had been saved by Shiro Amada many times, Sandals was confident that Shiro Amada would not stop there. Leave the captain's side to them. Now it's our turn. While Ray Minkai was speaking, the three Marine Gauda also came to the canyon. I'll go down. You guys watch. As soon as Karen opened her mouth, she volunteered to snatch the spot for homework reduction. Sandals had no objection. Ray Minkai was even more indifferent. After a while, Karen, who had tied the safety cable, stepped on the hook with 1 foot in the air, and one hand holding the steel cable, and gestured to Sandals. Sandals, who understood, immediately began the descent operation so that Karen could land on the edge of the rock formation with evidence as soon as possible. Unlike the busy two, although Ray Minkai did not participate in the landing operation, he did not need to do anything at the moment. Therefore, while Ray Minkai was on guard against his surroundings, several patterns that Shiro Amada and the others had never seen before appeared on the screen in front of Ray Minkai. This was a comparison diagram made by the engineering team for the high-power energy output device and the mysterious device dug out from the metal lump. Below these comparison diagrams, there was a line diagram that constantly fluctuated up and down. This was the radar designed and built by the engineering team overnight. Although it was not very reliable due to time, it was already able to meet the basic requirements for detecting the surrounding energy fluctuations. Beep beep. Suddenly, the line diagram displayed on the radar fluctuated sharply. It seemed that something was surging nearby. Apsilas 2? How is that possible? Apsilas 2 hasn't come here yet. In confusion, Karen's words solved this confusion. Kai, Sandals. There is a large area of vitrification below here. It seems to have been burned by a high-temperature object. Vitrification? This answer was not surprising. Apsilas 2 really came here, and it carried out a weapon test, just like in the original history. Captain Shiro, your wife is coming. Ray Minkai landed on the ground from Gauda's cockpit, stretched his head out to look at the burn marks on the rock walls on both sides, and couldn't help but sigh. At this time, with the help of Eladoya and Neguri, Shiro Amada, who finally repaired the fault of Gauda, also came here. At the same time, behind Gauda, there was also a guide team led by Chi-Chi. Kai, Karen, Sandals, how is it? As soon as he came to the edge of the canyon, Shiro Amada immediately asked, "Maybe we have found the right place. Captain, what you have been waiting for is about to happen." With that said, Rei Minkai added another sentence. "Captain, this may be a good thing in various senses." Chapter 305. John's Secret Base, Underground Hangar. Aina, with a tired face, walked down from the cockpit of Apsara's. Before she could take off her helmet, she was stopped by Kineas, who came up to greet her. "Aina, how's the situation?" Kineas's eyes flashed with an imperceptible concern, but Aina, who took off her helmet, didn't see it. She just nodded slightly. The operation is normal. The energy output is stable. To be honest, this is more stable than the previous reactor. Brother, it seems that Apsaras can advance to the next stage. I know that. What I want to know now is, Aina, is there any discomfort in your body? But Kineas didn't care about this. As the designer of Apsaras, he naturally knew the limits of what the current Apsaras could reach. The only thing he cared about was whether the V-engine secretly transported by the mysterious Miss Q would have any adverse effects on Aina. Body? Aina was taken aback. She subconsciously raised her hand and shook her head. "No. My body is fine." At this time, before Kineas could speak, a lazy voice sounded. "What a disappointment! I didn't expect Major General Kineas to be such a suspicious man. You know, this kind of man isn't liked by too many women." "Miss Q?" When he heard this voice, Kineas's face changed, then he showed a respectful expression. He turned and bowed in the direction of the voice. "Good afternoon, Miss Q." "Good afternoon, Major General Kineas." Under Ina's gaze, a tall woman in a John military uniform leaned against the door and looked over with a smile. As if she noticed Ina's gaze, the woman with long flame-like hair also looked at Ina and took the initiative to give a friendly greeting. "Good afternoon. You are Major General Kineas' sister, Ina Sakhaline, right? Nice to meet you. I'm Miss Q. I'm very sorry. For some reason, I can't disclose my real name. Miss Q." In fact, Ina had heard of this rather strange name from Kenya's when the latest model of Apsalas had gone offline. However, Ina didn't think too much about it. She didn't even think about it. This was because she knew that this woman, who was only known as Miss, was the key to the success of Apsaras's plan after the X3 engine was lost. What? Does Miss Ina still find the name Miss Q unacceptable? Seeing the strange look that flashed across Ina's face, the fiery red woman just smiled faintly and said casually, "No. That was rude of me. Miss Q. I'm Ina Sakhaline. First time meeting. It's a pleasure to meet you." At this moment, Ina fully displayed her manners as a young lady from a prestigious family. Even if the Sakhaline family only had Ina and Kineas, the two siblings, left. With a smile, Miss Q extended her hand and shook Ina's hand. She then looked up at Apsalas, who was surrounded by many maintenance personnel who were carrying out maintenance and improvements according to the plan. "Ina, is it okay to call you that? How does Apsaras feel about driving? Looks like this big guy is very heavy." Ina thought for a moment and then said, "Actually, at the beginning, I had the same idea as Miss Q. But when I really drove it, I found that it was far more agile than I imagined. In addition, the new V engine has increased Apsara's mobility by at least 30%. Oh? If that's the case, I'm relieved. At least, the current Apsaras didn't disappoint Commander Kirian's expectations. Ina, you're tired too. Go back and rest." Miss Q nodded and agreed with Ina's opinion. She also advised Ina to rest appropriately. Ina glanced at Kineas and found that her brother had the same opinion. She nodded obediently and turned to leave. However, before Ina could take more than a few steps, Miss Q suddenly opened her mouth and said, "Don't worry. All right. Ina, don't forget to feed your kitten when you rest." Don't let the cute kitten run out of the room and look for food because of hunger. Kitten? Is it the kitten I adopted? Ina froze and looked at Kinyas subconsciously. Kinyas nodded silently and echoed Miss Q's words. That's right. Ina. I know testing apsaras is hard work, but at least you have to take good care of the kitten. Hearing this, Ina nodded. I got it, brother Miss Q. I promise you, I'll take good care of my kitten. Did the kitten run out? When leaving the underground hangar, Ina's mind couldn't help but have this question. However, this question didn't last long before it was dispelled by a group of people who came out from another tunnel. Miss Ina. As soon as they met, the burly man walking at the front was Norris Barkard, who had gotten acquainted with Ina during the previous battle and subsequently became her bodyguard. Norris, you're here. Thank you for being my bodyguard this time. After the V-engine was successfully installed, Norris faithfully piloted the Lugan Tactical Reconnaissance aircraft to provide real-time navigation information for apsaras. No. This is what I should do. Miss Ina. As usual, in the face of Ina's gratitude, Norris didn't show too much emotion. He only had a serious face and said the same words. Is that so? Based on today's test results, the first phase is probably completed. In the future, we will have to rely on your strength. Norris. Yes. I will do my best to be your bodyguard. Norris and the soldiers behind him saluted in unison, before opening his mouth to speak again. Miss Ina. You left quickly before, so Major General Kinnis didn't have time to inform you that there will be a celebration banquet tonight. Celebration banquet? Ina paused for a moment, but she quickly understood. Since the V-engine had proven its power, then apsaras naturally met the conditions to enter the next phase. No. It should be said that after the V-engine became a part of apsaras, apsaras was enough to skip most of the plans and enter the final plan. As the test pilot of apsaras, Ina was very clear about this. Countless thoughts flashed through Ina's mind, but she only nodded faintly. I understand. Norris, I will be there on time. Yes. Miss Ina. Please rest at ease. Leave this to us. Please. Norris. After saying goodbye to Norris, Ina, who returned to her room, began to look around. In the end, Ina saw the kitten that Miss Q and Kinyas said was running around. It was quietly lying on the small bed that Ina had prepared for it. Kitten? Ina tried to yell out. The white cat Mimi's ears trembled slightly, then it looked up at Ina, buried its head in the small bed, closed its eyes, and continued to sleep. Seeing this, Ina wasn't surprised. After all, before coming here, she had seen the cats raised by the young ladies of other families behave in a similar manner. Therefore, Ina also concluded that the pure white cat's behavior at this moment was one of them. However, Ina didn't know that this white cat Mimi was secretly observing Ina. Not affected? When did that woman become so kind? The white cat Mimi slightly opened its eyes and secretly observed Ina, who was tidying up the room. After a long time, the pure white kitten still couldn't sense the energy fluctuation that it should have. No, it definitely could sense from Ina. Confused, the white cat Mimi raised its head and once again looked at Ina, who was tidying up the room. And Ina, who was tidying up the room, also noticed the white cat Mimi's gaze. Kitten, what's wrong? Are you hungry? Ina looked at the white cat Mimi, who raised its head and looked at her, then took out an unopened bag of cat food from the drawer next to her. Do you want to eat? Kitten. Ina shook the cat food in the bag, making the cat food in the bag rustle. At the same time, she also tried to attract the pure white cat. In the next second, the white cat Mimi lying on the small bed moved. It stood up, jumped lightly from the small bed to Ina's feet, then circled around Ina and glanced at the bag of cat food under Ina's shaking. After that, it walked out of the door without looking back. Hey, wait. Kitten. There's food here. Don't go out. The white cat Mimi walked away confidently, but Ina looked at the bag of cat food in her hand in surprise and hurriedly tried to stop the white cat Mimi. The result was obvious. When Ina chased out of the door, the white cat Mimi's figure had already disappeared in the corridor. It ran away so quickly. Looking at the empty corridor left and right, Ina could only take the bag of cat food in her hand, close the door, and prepare to wear the clothes for the celebration banquet tonight. Back to the white cat Mimi, which was also the white cat State Zero. Previously, it had noticed the whole process of the Apsaras that was created by Kenya's and encountered Ray Minkai and the others. It was about to fail due to the lack of a reactor, but it suddenly revived. However, even though the white cat State Zero had witnessed the whole process, due to the presence of a certain woman, the white cat State Zero did not dare to get too close. In the previous encounter, the white cat State Zero was not sure if the other party had already seen through its identity. After all, in the white cat State Zero's memory, its current weak and pitiful cat body was formed after the collapse of its home world and wandered to the Lucia world. However, regardless of whether the other party had seen through its identity, the white cat State Zero had to personally go to the underground hangar and see the engine installed on Apsaras with its own eyes. Along the way, the white cat State Zero familiarly moved along the pipes on the ceiling towards the underground hangar. From time to time, soldiers pushed food and drinks along the corridor below. In this secret base that had begun to implement material control, perhaps this was an opportunity to indulge in delicious food. Therefore, while pushing the food cart and laughing about what kind of new life they would usher in after the completion of the Apsaras project, the soldiers did not notice the little white cat sneaking all the way from the pipes above to the underground hangar. It should be here. Following the intricate pipes, the white cat State Zero quickly arrived at a huge space. Above the dome 100 meters above the ground, there was a huge screen door at least 30 meters in diameter. The white cat State Zero focused its gaze. In the center of this huge space was the target of the white cat State Zero's trip, Apsaras. Now, it was just half an hour before the celebration banquet began. All the research and development personnel who participated in the celebration banquet had already put down their work and headed to the large conference hall where the banquet was held. The only ones left here were the John soldiers who were on daily duty. The white cat State Zero casually glanced around and figured out the number of soldiers distributed around. Only less than 10 people? How careless! The white cat State Zero raised its front paw and jumped from the pipes on the ceiling to the wooden box placed below. Who? Although there were less than 10 people guarding Apsaras, their vigilance was very high. The white cat State Zero only lightly stepped on the wooden box and was discovered by these people. However, these vigilant soldiers could not help but lower their muzzles after seeing the appearance of the white cat State Zero. What? So it's just Miss Ina's cat. TSK. Little cat, why didn't you enjoy the banquet with Miss Ina? Instead, you came here. Could it be that you're here to catch rats? One of the soldiers said after seeing the white cat State Zero. The others could not help but laugh. Ha 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 ha. What are you talking about? Where did the rats come from? It's all a mess of gasoline smell. If it were me, I would rather choose the banquet with the fragrance of delicious food than here. Squatting on the wooden box, the white cat State Zero calmly looked at these gawing soldiers who were chatting and laughing with each other to pass the time. Then, it got up, jumped down from the wooden box to the ground, and walked towards Apsaras. Hey, little cat, don't go over there. That's not your cat tree. When the soldier who teased the white cat State Zero saw the white cat State Zero walking towards Apsaras, he immediately took a few steps forward and blocked in front of the white cat State Zero. However, he was only met with the white cat State Zero's disregard. Hey, wait, that's not a place you can go. Seeing that he was ignored by a little cat, the soldier immediately made his move and tried to pinch the white cat's neck. However, he was met with a merciless claw from the white cat State Zero. Swoosh! A cold light flashed, and the back of the hand of the Gewing soldier, who was trying to catch the white cat state 0, suddenly became a bloody mess. Ah! My hand! The pain of his flesh being torn instantly pierced through the Gewing soldier's thoughts, causing him to abandon the idea of trying to catch the white cat state 0 on the spot. He could only hold his bleeding right hand and howl miserably. Little did he know that the white cat state 0 had already shown him mercy. If the white cat state 0 had used its powerful claws, even if it was only a 10,000th of its strength, the Gewing soldier would probably have died. Puff! 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 Suddenly, a series of muffled sounds rang out one after another. It was the sound of the Gewing soldiers who were stationed here falling to the ground. Even the Gewing soldier who was holding his bloody right hand could not help but roll his eyes and fall to the ground without warning. This was not done by the white cat state 0, but by someone else. A cold light flashed in the eyes of the white cat state 0. With a leap, it jumped onto the elevator of Apsaras and turned its head to look at a dark corner. Ta! 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 Following a series of heavy metal footsteps on the ground, a figure shrouded in a huge cloak slowly walked out of the shadows. It was at least 2 meters tall. Under the cloak, the white cat state 0 could not see the true face of the figure. The only thing it knew was that under the hood, there was a pair of flashing red eyes and a cold aura that was not something a human could emit. Is it not a life form? The white cat state 0's claws flashed, and the front claws that could tear through gold and iron suddenly popped out. Chapter 306. Heavy footsteps sounded rhythmically, and the figure covered by the cloak walked out from the shadows to the light. With the rustling sound of the cloak being lifted, a dark muzzle appeared in front of the white cat. It was a right hand forged from cold steel. Above his right hand, there was a gun barrel that extended outwards from his forearm that was opened upward. There was no doubt that this right hand was not a right hand that a creature should have. Puff! In the next second, an almost inaudible muffled sound tore through the air. Immediately after, a burst of sparks suddenly exploded at the position where the white cat was originally at. Puff, 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 puff. The white cat moved. Following behind him were the bullets fired by the cold, gigantic figure. On the ground, the platform exploded with sparks. If it were not for the silencer extending out from the cold forearm, at this moment, other than the white cat's figure scurrying around, there would only be bursts of loud gunshots tearing through the space. The white cat's figure flashed, and rushed behind the console placed next to it like lightning, blocking the rain of bullets that were biting its figure from the console. There's no breath of life. Is it a cyborg? Or a robot? State White Cat Zero's pair of golden pupils looked through the gap between the consoles at the huge figure that was slowly walking towards them because it had lost its target. As the distance closed, the white cat finally saw the pair of flashing red eyes under the shadow of the hood. That was not a light that a human could use. Was not a pair of eyes that a human should have. That was just a pair of eyes forged from cold electronic parts and steel. Moreover, under this pair of eyes, there was no face that a human should have. What appeared in the white cat's eyes was only a cold steel mask that only revealed the flashing red eyes. Ta, ta, ta. The heavy footsteps were getting closer and closer. Before the right hand that was raised from under the cloak fell, the left hand was also raised. Buzz. A slight mechanical sound was heard, and 2 black muzzles were aimed at the control panel where the white cat was hiding. Poo-pee-you. Another round of gunshots that were suppressed by the silencer rang out. Although the gunshots were suppressed to a very low volume, the tearing sound of the console being hit by the bullet with powerful kinetic energy was very loud. TSK. Pop. Bang. Bang. Countless bullet holes appeared on the originally neat and orderly operating table. The documents placed on the table were shot into pieces and scattered all over the place. Amidst this chaotic scene that resembled falling snow, the control panel was quickly occupied by the chaotic sparks. Schwa! Suddenly, a bolt of white lightning shot out from the back of the almost destroyed console. The ice-cold body that was rudely smashing the console immediately turned the muzzle and fired wildly at the white lightning. At this moment, the flickering frequency of the two long silencer tubes suddenly increased by a lot. It was as if the cold body had intentionally held back some of its strength during the previous shooting. Therefore, after discovering the appearance of the white lightning, it immediately released all the firepower on its arms. However, even with all the firepower, it could not capture or even hit the white lightning that rushed out from behind the console. The seemingly ferocious rain of bullets only added a few sparks to the white lightning, adding some color to the sparks. Schwa! The speed of the white lightning was extremely fast. Before the cold body had poured out more than half of the bullets in the magazine, it had already rushed in front of it and then raised its sharp claws and waved it. Tisk! A sharp sound of metal colliding broke through the air. There are so many hidden gadgets. Under the cold golden pupils was the blade that popped out from the steel arm. The white cat state 0, no, it should be the lion state 0 now. During the attack just now, the white cat state 0 released part of its strength and became a more powerful and faster lion body. Facing the claw attack of the lion state 0, the attacker only raised his arm and used the blade to easily block it. Purring! As the cloak puffed up, another cold blade from bottom to top went straight to the soft abdomen of the lion state 0. The back leg of the lion state 0 stepped on the hilt of the thrusting sword and jumped back, easily escaping from the threat of the blade. However, before the body of the lion state 0 landed, the gunshots came one after another, leaving no time for the lion state 0 to stabilize its position. Puff, puff, puff. The muffled gunshots once again attacked the lion's 0. The lion state 0 exerted strength on all four limbs and easily escaped from the shooting axis of the bullet. Although the speed of the bullets was very fast, the lion state 0 knew that as long as he could see the movements of the huge body covered by the cloak, he could easily see through his attack pattern. After a few ups and downs, the lion state 0 had already circled to the back of the enemy. "Let me see your damn appearance." The enemy, who was always one step behind, just turned around. The lion state 0 seized the opportunity and fiercely stomped, waving its sharp claws, and suddenly tore the cloak used to hide the identity of the enemy. Tear! As the broken cloak fell, a body with cold light flowing around it, made of cold steel and composite materials, appeared in front of the lion state 0. The pair of flashing red eyes and the iron mask that had nothing to do with humans were clearly reflected in the eyes of the lion state 0. This was undoubtedly a robot made by humans, a robot with a certain degree of intelligence. Hey! Sure enough, it's just a pile of useless scrap iron. The lion state 0 smiled contemptuously, once again exerted strength on all four limbs, and took the lead to attack. The lion state 0 was very fast, but the robot that had exposed its true body was not weak either. The pair of red electronic eyes flashed, and its arms suddenly opened several baffles, revealing all the barrels hidden inside. In an instant it locked on to the lion state 0. In the next second gunshots were heard. Tut 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 tut. This time, the gun barrel that extended from the robot's arm no longer had a silencer to suppress the sound of gunfire. The frenzied gunshots became the only sound in this underground space. The flickering flames illuminated the faces of the queuing soldiers on the ground, making them flicker in and out of existence. The whistling bullets blocked the path in front of State Lion 0. As long as State Lion 0 took another step forward, he would definitely receive more and more intensive bullet attack. TSK. State Lion 0 cursed in his heart. With a flash of his body, he deftly changed his charging posture to the right, and once again rushed to the back of the pile of wooden boxes. Tut 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 tut. There was no reason and no hesitation. As soon as the robot saw State Lion 0 hiding behind the wooden boxes, It immediately aimed its gun at the wooden boxes and frantically poured out all the ammunition it had stored. Tut tut tut! Amidst the loud gunshots, the wooden boxes that were stacked several meters high could not stop the bullets from moving forward. As the wooden boxes were torn apart by the whistling bullets and splashed into the air, the pile of wooden boxes that was several meters tall collapsed with a loud explosion. Boom! Wood chips, wood fragments, and debris were all over the sky. The pieces of wood and boxes of wooden boxes could not avoid the fate of being torn apart by the bullets and became one of the many wreckage that covered the ground. Schwa! Amidst the scattered wood chips, State Lion Zero, hidden behind the wooden boxes, once again exerted its strength. In an instant it once again turned into white lightning, raised its right claw with lightning speed, and went straight to the robot's arms. Bang! The sound of metal hitting metal exploded, followed by the sound of two metal objects falling to the ground. It was the arms. It was the robot's insufferably arrogant arms. At that moment, State Lion Zero ruthlessly tore off the robot's arms with its sharp claws that could tear through most of the metal. Schwa! The inertia of the rapid movement caused State Lion Zero to leave a long trace on the ground full of wood chips. State Lion Zero even raised its head and sneered at the robot that had lost its weapon. "Is that all you have? Iron lump? Caw!" As if it felt State Lion Zero's ridicule, the robot's red electronic eyes suddenly flashed, and the cold armor on its chest suddenly opened up, revealing two four-barreled Gatling guns hidden deep inside. Buzz 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 buzz. In the blink of an eye, a low buzzing sound sounded again. State Lion Zero was once again shrouded in a dense barrage of bullet. TSK. Its body is not big, but it hides a lot of things. State Lion Zero scolded in a low voice. Its figure flashed, and it had already rushed dozens of meters away. In the previous battle, State Lion Zero had already discovered the robot's weakness. Although its attack was very fierce, it had at least two weaknesses. First, it seemed to have been given a certain order, and it could not hurt the unconscious Gewing soldiers lying on the ground. Otherwise, the Gewing soldiers would have been killed at the beginning. Second, although the robot's barrage attack was terrifying, its movements were not agile enough. As long as State Lion Zero exerted a little force, it could not keep up with State Lion Zero's movements and was always one step behind. Therefore, State of the Lion Zero only needed to go around to its back again to finish it off. Die for me. State Lion Zero successfully went behind the robot again, raised its right claw, and slapped the robot's head with force. Pa! Zila! In the midst of the explosion of sparks, the two roaring Gatling guns were suddenly silenced and fell into eternal silence. Ta! Boom! The robot's central system was smashed by State Lion Zero's palm and fell to the ground. Looking at the green liquid that gradually flowed out from the gap, State Lion Zero fell into deep thought. Although he could easily kill the robot, the technology on the robot should not be from this world's human technology. The only person who could create this robot was probably that woman, Miss Q. Have I been exposed? State Lion Zero raised its eyes and looked at the aisle not far away. The fight just now had caused a big enough commotion. Even if the base did not arrange more troops to guard because of the celebration banquet, it should not have gone unnoticed. While thinking, State Lion Zero's golden pupils suddenly burst out a golden light. The sharp claw that was pressed on the robot's wreckage suddenly popped out and pierced deeply into the robot's body. Then, an invisible light flashed quickly from State Lion Zero's sharp claw, and it had already wandered a few rounds in the robot's wreckage. Pa! 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 A series of slight explosions sounded one after another in the robot's wreckage. Obviously, the robot's electronic components and database had been destroyed by State Lion Zero. Maybe this can buy some time. State Lion Zero looked back at Apatsalas, who was not affected by the battle, and finally gave up the idea of continuing to check on it. Even if no one came to check on the situation, if this robot was really that woman, she should have already noticed the situation here. Continuing to stay here would only increase the risk of exposure. With a flash of white light, State Lion Zero returned to the weak and pitiful body of the White Cat Zero. The little white cat turned its head and glanced at Eputhalas. Then, it leaped up. After a few leaps, it jumped onto the ceiling pipe and disappeared. A few minutes later, a series of messy footsteps sounded. Quick, quick, quick. Sure enough, it was just as the White Cat Zero had guessed. The Guion army in this base had discovered that something was wrong with the underground hangar. Under the leadership of the fiery red woman in the Guion military uniform, a support team of hundreds of people quickly rushed into the underground hangar. The Guion soldiers who rushed into the underground hangar saw their own soldiers lying on the ground, bullet holes everywhere, wood shavings all over the ground, and the cold metal body lying among the wood shavings. Apart from taking your people away, you are not allowed to touch anything else. Also, tell Kias to come here less often. While the Guion soldiers were shocked by the scene in front of them, the cold female voice instantly woke them up. Yes. Now, do it immediately. There was no need to look back or ask questions. As long as they heard that cold voice, Guing's soldiers immediately knew what they should do and what they shouldn't do. Thus, Guing's soldiers quickly carried their fallen comrades out of the underground hangar and guarded the door, leaving the space to the fiery red woman. After everyone had left, the woman with a frosty expression slowly walked over to the robot's body that had lost all signs of life. She bent down to examine it. Even the database was destroyed. Who is lurking here? The Federation army in this world doesn't have such technology. The purple pupils under the fiery red hair flashed with the light of thinking. It's just that I didn't expect that even the small AS Avenger could be so easily dealt with. Is there a human in this world who can tear apart a robot with their bare hands? Or is there a species that I don't know about that has sneaked into this base? Chapter 307. Kineas was furious. Tonight's celebration banquet might have become his nightmare. The celebration banquet that should have been immersed in the joy of the plan's success became infuriating due to the arrival of a man who didn't know what was good for him and forced his way into the banquet. Yuri Kalani. Each and every one of them was impulsive and boorish. His appearance made Kineas, who usually followed noble etiquette, extremely uncomfortable. In some ways, Kineas didn't have a good impression of this man who was also General Guing. Especially after this man barged into the banquet, he said Apsalas, who Kineas put most of his effort into, was a toy that wasn't enough. Moreover, after Kineas had shown his indifference, this reckless man had actually turned around to harass his sister, Aina. This made Kineas almost explode on the spot. Fortunately, Aina also made a prompt decision and found a reason to leave the banquet. This allowed Kineas to heave a sigh of relief, but it also increased his dislike for this reckless man. However, Kineas, who had just breathed a sigh of relief, was about to turn around and put some distance between him and the reckless man when a messenger with a panicked expression barged into the banquet and told Kineas about the accident that happened in the underground hangar, as well as Miss Q's words. This was also the reason why Kineas was so angry in the beginning. Mississippi Q, Mississippi. Why didn't you let our people investigate the scene? Standing in the underground hangar filled with bullet holes, Kineas angrily questioned the woman in front of him. Faced with Kineas's question, Miss Q only shook her head and said without emotion, "No need. The bullet holes here were all caused by my Avenger. The only thing worth investigating is the scars on the Avenger's body." As she spoke, Miss Q rolled her eyes and mercilessly stated a reason. "I already provided you with the V-engine. The Avenger wasn't part of our agreement. Therefore, there's no need to talk about investigating. I'll take care of it." With that, Miss Q turned around and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, after Miss Q had walked a few steps away, a series of painful cries could be heard. Major General Kinneas? Miss Q turned around again and saw Kinneas, who was holding his heart and half kneeling on the ground with a painful expression. Why are you here? Are you ill? Miss Q took a few steps forward and tried to help Kinneas to the other side. After settling him down, she was ready to call for help. No. It's just an old problem. Ask Ina to come over. She has my medicine. However, Kinneas held on to Miss Q's right hand tightly, instructing her intermittently. Miss Q glanced at her right hand that was caught by Kinneas and nodded silently. In that case, Kinneas, wait a moment. I'll get someone to inform Ina to come over. Half an hour later, Kinneas was sent back to his room. On the way, Yuri Kellini, the man whom Kinneas viewed as reckless and even a mortal enemy, was directly chased back to Europe by Ina with the reason that Kinneas needed to rest. After the doctor concluded that Kinneas was overworked and needed rest, he asked the accompanying nurse to pass the medicine that Kinneas usually took to Ina. Does Major General Kinneas need to take so many medicines every day? After the doctor left, Miss Q, who was watching from the side, looked at the pile of medicine on the tray in Ina's hand and asked, Brother has always been weak and sickly since he was young. Even after he grew up, he still needed medicine to accompany him. Now, he has put most of his effort into the Apsara's plan. Holding the tray, Ina lowered her head slightly and used a slightly sad voice to explain why Kinneas was so weak. If it wasn't for the man tonight, Yuri Kellini, who would make Brother lose his cool whenever he appears in front of him, I'm afraid Brother wouldn't have become like this. Hearing that, Miss Q raised her eyebrows slightly. Is that so? So it's like this? It seems that I was too harsh just now. I'm sorry, Ina. Just now in the underground hangar, I said some things that were considered too much. It might have agitated Kinneas. How could that be? Miss Q, how could you agitate Brother? If it wasn't for you providing the V-engine to Brother, I'm afraid Apsaras wouldn't have been able to enter the next stage. Obviously, Ina, who didn't go to the underground hangar from beginning to end, didn't know what happened. No. These things are in the past, there's no need to talk about it. Ina. After pausing for a moment, Miss Q glanced at the medicine on the tray and slowly made a suggestion. Ina. Going on like this isn't a solution. The importance of Apsaras, needless to say, you and I both know. At this critical moment, Major General Kinneas wouldn't be willing to lie on the bed. So, I have a suggestion. Maybe it can reduce Major General Kinneas' pain a little, and at the same time, it might be able to let Major General Kinneas get rid of his dependence on medicine. What? Miss Q, you have a way to cure Brother's illness? Looking at Ina, who was stunned but also pleasantly surprised, Miss Q smiled confidently. Of course. The strength of our organization, I'm afraid no one in this world can understand. While Ina was worrying about Kinneas' illness, the white cat, State Zero, who had returned to the room, was planning something. It was very clear that even if it destroyed the database of the robot, the Avenger that Miss Q mentioned, it wouldn't be able to hide its existence for a long time. What's more, it had already scouted out most of the information about this base. Especially the woman who suddenly appeared here, Miss Q. This woman's appearance could be said to be the white cat's biggest surprise on this trip, and also its biggest gain. Maybe it's time to go back. If I continue to stay like this, that woman will definitely find out about my existence. Its sharp claws unconsciously slid on the table, and the white cat's golden pupils revealed a trace of pondering light. However, even if it made the decision to leave, the white cat was still brooding over the secret of Apsaras. After all, when it was only one step away from discovering the secret, it was interrupted by the Avenger, and this made the white cat unhappy. Even if it destroyed the Avenger, it couldn't offset the resentment in the white cat's heart. I didn't expect that woman to send this iron lump to guard that thing. Isn't she afraid that the humans in this world will covet this technology? On second thought, the white cat immediately rejected this idea, because it knew that Miss Q would definitely use the method of loosening the reins only to grasp them better, and lure the humans attracted by the technology to serve her. Therefore, its act of destroying the Avenger might help that woman. Thinking of this, the white cat's heart became even more unhappy. TSK. Forget it. Now I should think of a way to leave this base. Suddenly, the white cat, who was thinking about how to cross the rainforest outside to meet up with Ray Minkai, thought of a good way to discover the truth of Apsara's V-engine and quickly meet up with Ray Minkai. That was to find an opportunity to enter Apsara's cockpit with Aina. At that time, White Cat Zero would be able to complete the rendezvous with Ray Minkai while investigating the truth of the V-engine. It knew that Ray Minkai would definitely keep an eye on Apsara's movements. In fact, as the White Cat expected, not only did Ray Minkai keep an eye on Apsara's movements, he even set up a trap in the canyon where Apsara's appeared, waiting for Apsara's to walk into the trap. When the sound of a propeller stirring the air was heard from afar, Ray Minkai and the others' ambush position, Ray Minkai sent out a signal to prepare. Neguri! Coming! Following Neguri's loud response, the Type 74 hovercraft hidden under the camouflage net suddenly emitted 2 plumes of smoke. Woo-woo! As the smoke rose, the sound of air being torn apart rang out. 2 artillery shells hidden in the giant net soared into the air. Then, the moment the drone rose from the bottom of the canyon, it detonated on the spot, opening up the 2 giant nets with the impact of the explosion. In the blink of an eye, the drone that was used as a target was firmly trapped inside. Then, several sparks suddenly exploded on the left side of the canyon cliff. Boom! 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 3 explosions rang out, indicating that the poor drone had been hit by 3 artillery shells, thus ending its short service life. The drill is over. Everyone did well. Looking at the wreckage of the drone scattered on the ground, Shiro Amada secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although they don't know how powerful the huge monster body is, for now the 8th squad is in the best condition they can do. Phew. It's finally over. Neguri wiped the sweat off his forehead and let out a long sigh of relief. Since Eladoya wasn't injured and had to leave the party, Neguri didn't have the time to read the letter even though he had received it. After all, under Eladoya's command and the pressure of many tasks, Neguri had gradually adapted to the changes required to become a competent soldier. Neguri, the drill is over. You have some time before dinner to settle your personal matters. Eladoya, who took off his headphones, casually said to Neguri, then turned around and hugged his music score. Unlike the previous incident where he was injured and had to leave the team, Eladoya was now wholeheartedly focused on his career as a singer, which had paid off and seemed to have a bright future ahead of him. On the other side, in addition to Sandus and Karen, who were carefully adjusting the performance of the drone, Shiro Amada walked down from the drone and sat down on a rock on the edge of the cliff, watching the sun gradually set in the west. Now Chi-Chi, who was noisy all day long, was nowhere to be found. Shiro Amada, who rarely had free time, couldn't help but stop. He subconsciously took out the pendant hanging around his neck, the clock, and looked at it in a daze. Captain, it seems that your sweetheart is indeed an unforgettable beauty. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded behind Shiro Amada. Shiro Amada was so scared that he almost dropped the clock pendant in his hand. You, Second Lieutenant? It's you. Holding the clock pendant tightly, Shiro Amada let out a long sigh of relief. If he lost the clock pendant in his hand, Shiro Amada would probably turn hostile on the spot. Sorry. I didn't mean to, Captain. It's just that when I saw you sitting here in a daze, looking at the pendant while thinking about something, I couldn't help but call you. Ray Minkai showed an apologetic smile and frankly admitted his mistake. Sigh. Forget it. You didn't mean to. It's just, Second Lieutenant, aren't you going to check your drone? Shiro Amada put down his hands and put the clock pendant in his arms. It's already adjusted. In fact, all I can do is to clear the dust for Drone 4. In this place, adjusting the drone's performance is far less important than cleaning up the dust in the way. Reimenkai's words made Shiro Amada slightly stunned, then he showed a helpless smile. Reimenkai was right. Not long ago, Shiro Amada had personally experienced how abominable and disgusting the annoying sand and dust was. However, before Shiro Amada could continue on this topic, Reimenkai suddenly turned the topic back to the clock pendant in Shiro Amada's hand. Captain, I don't know what kind of person the woman who gave you this seemingly precious thing is? Shiro Amada was stunned. After he reacted with great difficulty, he slowly raised the clock pendant in his hand. Her? Second Lieutenant. If I tell you that this pendant was given to me by a member of the Gion army, would you believe it? Hearing this, Reimenkai nodded and replied very seriously, Yes, why wouldn't I believe it? Once again, Shiro Amada was stunned by his calm answer. When he was testing Reimenkai, he didn't expect Reimenkai's counterattack to be so sharp. All of a sudden, Shiro Amada's words that were brewing in his heart were beaten back. Little did he know that even if Shiro Amada didn't ask, Reimenkai would know who the clock pendant was from. The reason why Reimenkai asked this now was just to be able to smoothly proceed to the next step. Shiro Amada was silent for a while. After a long time, he slowly opened his mouth and asked, Could it be, Second Lieutenant, you want to? Reimenkai shook his head, raised his hand, patted Shiro Amada's shoulder, and said with a smile, I'm not thinking of anything. I just felt that it wasn't easy to find out that there was actually a modern version of the story of Romeo and Juliet in this world, so I couldn't help but want to find out. Romeo and Juliet? When Shiro Amada heard the classic story mentioned by Reimenkai, he immediately fell into silence again. That's right. The story between Shiro Amada and Aina was also a copy of Romeo and Juliet. However, the ending of the two was far happier and more perfect than the original protagonist. However, Shiro Amada still didn't know. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.